right, guys.
We'll talk after.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and get started, and if people come in late, they can sit in the back there. But thank you all for being here. And I know it sounds like we've got a really full plate today. And Jim, thank you for coming. I know you've got to head out right after your deal, so appreciate you being here. And I'll let you go ahead and jump in and do your thing.
Okay. All MAC committee members, thank you very much. What I'm going to present to you is the comprehensive plan. And what this is, you're all probably aware of, that the board approved the bridge plan, which was for kind of facilities that are in need immediately. And the comprehensive plan is to look at not only facilities but programs. And in fact, what we're looking at programs into the future and what kind of facilities we need to support those programs. Our kids are important to our future. Dallas must prepare students to thrive in a rapidly changing and unpredictable world. Innovation, transformation, ways required to build a learning environment. This includes programs and facilities. And what is really important in here is programs and facilities. Education is the ultimate return of investment. Investment today reaps benefits for tomorrow and years to come. So what we're talking about is we want to align programs with the facilities. So we're looking at our academic needs, we're looking at the academic programs to fulfill those needs, and the facilities plan which would support those academic programs. And so you can see overall the total for the comprehensive plan right now on the drawing table is $1.58 billion. This plan is being reviewed by the Futures Facility Task Force, and so these numbers will change. So in order to move the school district ahead, there are 4 areas that we have to look at. And the first focus is early childhood. $161 million in programs. Public school choice, $37.1 million in programs. Career and technology, $16 million in programs. And then the facilities to support those programs would be approximately $1.37 billion. Early childhood, we're looking at space to serve a large number of preschool age children that are out there. We're looking at populations shifts and expected to handle the shortages. Improvements are necessary to ensure the students attend classrooms. Cost of the program was $161 million. Public school choice, potential locations for new choice campuses, budget for existing neighborhood schools. Program cost $37.1 million. Career and technology, examine the need to efficiently offer career programs requiring specialized equipment and facilities for high demand, livable wage. Engaging fields include engineering, health sciences, architecture, construction, logistics. Program cost $16 million. General high needs facilities for the program. General high needs facilities, overcrowded schools we have to look at, extensive campus conditions for renovations, administrative needs for effectiveness. Schools atop these lists are represented in the plan. Administrative needs must be considered to save approximately $11 million per year, leading to a 20-year savings of $220 million to put back into classrooms.
What does that mean? The administration needs must be considered to save. When I read that, I was like, I don't know what that means.
Well, what that means is that the administration right now is in approximately 30 different buildings. And so we have to maintain all of the buildings. If we were to consolidate the buildings, our numbers has showed that we could probably save $11 million per year. Over 20 years, that would be $220 million.
Okay.
The current facility needs and initiative. Parsons report shows priority 1 and priority 2 needs. Identified $1.8 billion in deferred maintenance needs, $2.6 billion to keep current facilities in good repair over the next 11 years. It does not include programs-based needs. There's currently, what are we doing currently? Well, currently we've put in $306 million into initiatives. We put in $15 million annually deferred maintenance funds. We have, a board has approved $148 million in the bridge plan. More than 20 of our most critical campus needs will be met. We have $143 million in QSCB bonds, which right now are doing hydronic conversions for HVAC and middle school science labs. Funding, investment of the size and scope required support of the voters. So really what this presentation should be let's look at tax ratification election, which would support programs and facilities, and let's look at the traditional way that we fund facilities only, and that's the bond. The administration is recommending current funding tool of a tax ratification election for financing of both the programs and the facility needs. The TRE allows funding for capital and program needs, which are both critical for the future. Remember, the bonds will only support facility needs, not program needs.
So the program needs you're talking about here, are those, even though we're calling them programs, are they facilities for pre-K?
No, they're programs. There
So-
would be teachers, it would be the equipment for the teachers, it would be the
So,
programs.
so for those dollars, over what, just say.
214.
Right, so over what period, how many years is that?
Well, you'll see the funding you'll see the number of years, I believe it's about 5 years.
So that would cover those 3 programs for 5 years?
Well, it would cover those programs and keep the programs going indefinitely into the future. This is kind of the initial cost to bring them online.
Okay, so there's upfront cost,
Upfront cost, right?
in addition to regular annual costs?
Facilities, right.
Okay.
So the past bond programs, it was in 2002, $1.37 billion in funding. You can see the new schools added. That was, I believe, 13 years ago. Then 7 years ago, there was a 2008 bond program of $1.36 billion. So 6 years later, we've yet to have any major bond program. Dallas ISD tax base growth. The table on your left is a historical growth of the assessed value, because you have to remember assessed value is what drives the local revenue. And we get approximately 2/3 of our money locally, and the other third comes from the state. So you can see that the mean or the average growth is 3.4% for the last 10 years. And then what we've done is we looked at the growth, or projected the growth into the next 10 years. And the mean, the average that we used was 3.7, so it's 0.3%. So we're a little bit optimistic that we'll do better into the next 10 years than we did in the last 10 years. And that assumption is one of the major assumptions that we use in developing our table and our bond model and our TRE model.
And was that that 3.7%, was that internally developed, or was that?
No. Yes, that was ours.
And so what was the basis for the coming up with the data?
My optimism. I mean, it's really not that far off, as I say, from the
3.6.
what?
It's not significantly different than
No.
3.6 you've been reading for the
3.4,
last 10 years.
right. So, but I wanted you to see that we didn't go hog wild on our optimism. But we think with the economy is much stronger, and we do believe that economy. As part of this comparison, we have to know where we sit with our bonds. We showed you the S&P ratings, AA minus for Dallas, and we gave you the bond ratings for Moody's and the bond ratings for Fitch, which is AA plus. And for the bonds, if we went out for bonds, we would get a AAA rating when we bought insurance from PSF, Public School Foundation Program. If we do a TRE, we would be using the underlying ratings, which are right here, would be our underlying ratings, which would cost us probably about 25 basis more than doing the bond. So the finance options, bond issuance, taxpayer election for both the bond and for the TRE. Funds facilities only. The bond is only the facilities. The TRE would include facilities and programs, the 214 million in programs. Interest and sinking fund. Now, the way we pay for bonds is, if you think of your right hand here as going into your right pocket and pulling out your change to pay for the bonds, and if your left hand goes into your left pocket and pulls out money, and that's an M&O tax. So the two different taxes that pay. So M&O is out of our operation taxes, and the INS that pays for the bonds is out of the INS fund. Bond, there's no additional cost to taxpayers 65 and older, either the bond or the TRE. So if you're 65 or older, then your tax rates are not going to go up, the amount of money that you pay for your tax. The payoff for the bonds is 2045. The payoff for the TRE is 2026. So 19 years less time than the bonds to pay off. Now, I can tell you that these numbers here are going to change. We're already running new models. One thing that we found in the TRE model and the bond in the TR model, which remember is the M&O, is that we're going to have to pay recapture once we get beyond the gold pennies, which is $1.06, for $1.07 to $1.17. The TRE would be could be a 13 cents increase, or it could be something less, and we have to capture and to go through the funding formulas and talk about copper pennies, gold pennies, and silver pennies would probably take us a couple hours, so I'm not going to go into that.
Thank you.
But I'd be more than open.
But that is what accounts for the 19 years difference?
No.
So why is the TRE able to be paid off?
Well, what we did, and we could change it, as a matter of fact, I've already run the numbers, is that the bond traditionally goes out in school districts 30 to 40 years. So we could change the bond structures to 11 years, and looking at the same structure. And when we did that, the INS tax over here would go up to 29.9 cents, as the TRE would be 13 cents. So it'd be,
And
So can I restate that in English?
yes, please.
And tell me if I'm wrong about this. So right now, we pay $1.28 per $100 assessed value.
That's right.
Right?
104 of that is M&O.
$1.04 goes to the general fund,
M&O.
and 24 cents goes to pay debt. Right? So you're saying we're going to bump this from $1.04 to $1.17.
Right.
All right. So that's that 13-cent raise. So now we're at $1.41 per 100, except that now we're going to add, and we're going to go from 24 cents to 30 cents to pay back the debt.
No.
Okay.
It's one or the other.
Okay.
The bond, and what is going to happen if we don't touch the bond, the INS side, and you'll see it, is that interest rate that we have, that tax rate will go down, because it's already structured, and we're not touching the INS rate. So what we do is, over in the M&O side, we could go as high as $1.17, which would be 13 cents more. Okay. Now that will drop a little bit over time, because remember, your tax rate the total tax rate is made up of your INS and your M&O. So what would happen is your M&O would go up 13 cents, and over time the INS would be coming down, so your tax rate would be lowered over time. But if I was to do 11 years for a bond and do the TRS, the TRS would go up 13 cents, and the bond over 11 years fixed income would be 12.9 cents.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Okay.
Now I understand.
All right.
So
I'm not as quick as Mike here.
Okay.
Intrinsically, you favor the TRE over the bond.
Yes, and it's
Because-
not intrinsically, it's because you will see is that the TRE can pay for a program. And facilities, I mean the bond The TRE can pay for programs and facilities, and the bond can only pay for your facilities.
So,
But it seems, so from a cost perspective, both from the district and the taxpayers, do the taxpayers end up paying a bit more under the TRE over the, over the life?
Actually, you'll pay more over the bond. And the reason is because of we're using more cash. We're using as much cash, and when I get through that, maybe we'll go through that. The total interest and issuance cost for the bond is 1.6 billion. This number on the TRE after recapture will change significantly. So right now, when we first ran it without the recapture, it was only 100 million. Now, we don't know. The legislature is in session as we talk, and they're changing, okay? So what's going to end up in terms of exactly recapture, we don't know yet. So that will be affected. But I just want you to know that this particular model I ran was without recapture.
so again, we're at $1.41 per $100 assessed value, and we're still at 24 cents going to pay off the debt, right?
Right.
Okay, so.
Under
so-
TRE.
Under the TRE. All right, so perfect, I get that part. And we have no guess at what recapture is gonna be because.
Oh, yeah, we do. Well, that's why we're running the models.
Can you give the guess? Because I mean, it's different for different school districts because of Robin Hood, right? And I know that some school districts,
Right.
like Fort Worth, it was 36% 6 years ago, and now it's 6%. I mean, it's like all over the place, so.
I could tell you that recapture currently is 31, any penny that we earn over $31.95 per watt is recaptured. And I can tell you that our per watt right now is about 48 cents, so it's about $16. So for every penny per watt, we would pay $16 back to the state.
Okay.
Does that help? No.
Oh, no, I know, it helps immensely. I just wanted to guess on it because, like you said, your numbers here are without recapture, and the reality is we're not gonna be getting all of this money,
We think it'll be about $20 million.
about $20 million. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jim. That is, and I know that it's in flux and it's,
Yes.
nobody's gonna hold your feet to the fire on the number, but
Yep.
that's something that we can
Please-
have a conversation about.
Please
So-
note that the top left there says preliminary draft.
Yeah.
These numbers will change. Okay.
All right, thank you.
So it's cheaper in the long run. How much? It's not going to be 750 million. Under the no recapture, it would be $750 million. This includes an additional 200. The other thing is that remember that under the TRE, it's going to include $214 million for programs critical to students and achievement. The debt is paid off 19 years earlier than the bond, and of course that's a traditional bond of 30 years. And again, there's no impact to taxpayers 65 and older. So here is the table, which I will try to go through. And I'll do this column by column so you can kind of see what the methodology is. And this actually has the new table in. So this is the TRE with the new table. It isn't complete though. So you take the year, so 2016 would be fiscal year ending, that's the top left-hand corner. And this would be next fiscal year. So what would happen is if the board decided that they were going to do a TRE, the board would have to adopt a tax rate of $1.17 if they would go to the max in August. You then, with the tax bills would go out in October, and then in November, there would be a TRE election. And if the election passed, everything's good. If the election doesn't pass, then we roll back to the $1.04. So the next column there is revenue minus expenditure, that's the net. So it's kind of like, you get your paycheck and then you you pay all your bills and whatever's left, you got extra cash. So if we would go to $1.17, you can see with the amount of cash that we're projecting would be left there. The next column says contribution to the fund balance. Well, I being the CFO, I want to put some money into my fund balance so it continues to grow and we maintain our strong financial. So that's certainly something that could change. And I've got 20 million, so that could be adjusted. Then the cost of the programs is listed there. It's 214 million, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would be over 5 years we would be implementing the cost of those programs. Then we would take the cash remaining, less the programs and the fund balance. So this is essentially cash that we would have. So in this case, in the first year, we'd have $132 million cash. The cost of the comprehensive facilities, which is $1.374 billion, well, they're not going to spend it all right away. So it's going to be kind of a cash flow where over the next 6 years, they're going to be spending the money down. So in the first year, they would be 13 million, so we subtract that from the cash that we had available, and that would leave $118 million that we would put in the bank. In this case, we put it into the fund balance. The following year, so if I go back to the comprehensive facilities, which cost me 68 million, and then to the cash remaining after the facilities, I'd have 16 million. Well, I'd put 118 million away the previous year so I could pay cash for that 16 million and still have 100 million sitting there. In the third year of the program, I would need 298 for the cost of the comprehensive facilities and the programs, and then that would leave me a negative cash flow of 217 million, I believe. And I can apply the 100 million, but it means that that first number in parentheses in the third year is 116 million. So that 116 million means that I have to go out, and you go 2 columns over where you see 117 million. Is the third column from the right. It says 117 million. So I've got to go out and I've got to put out either maintenance tax notes or what are called lease revenue bonds, depending on whether it's renovations or it's new construction. And I would put out what are called variable debt. Let's just put it in easier terms, variable debt bonds. And you can see then in the fourth year, I'm 592. I'm actually $476 million short, so I've taken another bond for 477. And in the third year, I am $336 million short, so I have to go out and fund that. So the total funding is $930 million, as opposed to having to fund $1.137 billion in bonds. So there's two things. One is that in the TRE, I'm having to finance less dollars by almost 500 million less, and I get an additional 214 million for the programs. So you can see under this scenario, I'm funding 930 million, and the total debt payment and principal payment is 1.12. As opposed to the bond, which is 2.4. So it's going to be about 100 million, about 100 million, 1.2 million cheaper. So, but again, these are preliminary numbers.
So question.
Right.
So, but you've got $160 million in the middle there of cash remaining after the facility.
Yeah,
So why borrowing so much then?
well, notice it goes by years, but you're right. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the 6th year, I've got 104 million.
Right.
And I will structure the debt now so that it's not fixed. It will have a repricing on it, and I will start using this cash remaining in fact, to pay off the debt. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm paying off the debt a lot quicker than if I had a fixed bond over the traditional 30 years.
Okay.
So look at the bottom line there where it says 930 million. That's the amount that I have to borrow, and I'm going to borrow that over a relatively, this will be paid off in 11 years. Okay?
Okay.
Whereas in the bond, I would be borrowing $1.37 billion and paying it off. It could be as long as 30 years, or I could shorten it up. But it's going to be, I'm borrowing more over a longer period of time, and that's why the TRE saves you money. And as again, the TRE allows you to put in the programs in, whereas the bond doesn't. So the total cost of the taxpayer is this way: no impact on homeowners over 65. So either the M&O, TRE, or the bond election. Total cost is $2.4 billion. The total cost is $1.6 billion. This will change a little bit. Payment for the program is on the M&O side, not on the bond side, is $214 million. Payment for the facility is $1.37. Payment for the facility is the same, $1.37. Interest payments $1.606 billion versus, and this again will change after the recap.
What is the interest rate on money?
We used, I believe, 5% on. Let me see. I think we used 5% on the bonds. It's in here on the fixed rate.
On the fixed rate?
On the fixed rate.
5%?
Yeah.
But you don't have an interest rate on the bond money at all, do you?
On the
I mean,
TRE.
Money you get from the bonds, you don't have to pay interest, but
No, I
you
do.
You do pay interest?
Oh,
on
yeah.
them? Okay.
Yeah, the way that it
How much
works.
is that?
Well, I believe it was either 4.5% or 5%.
So it's close
So the
to-
way the bonds work is that the authorization election saying you can put out bonds, and then we kind of write pieces of paper, like $5,000, and somebody will then give us the money, but they get interest for every year that they hold that.
Oh,
And that rate's called the bond yield, and it'll be somewhere between 4.5% and 5%. In today's current market. And I can tell you that today's current market will change. Yes.
So Jim, I guess the only question that I have, and I don't quite understand this, the cost of the programs you have, $214 million for the next, 5 years?
Right.
5 years.
Right.
Does the cost stop after that?
No,
Or-
we figured it into remember, if you go back to that, you'll see the revenue minus the expenditures. So the data, the yearly cost as we implement those programs are in those operations netted from the revenues and the expenditures.
So this goes back to our last meeting when you said you expect a revenue generation to pay for the cost of these programs after this 5th year, is that correct?
Well,
Or somebody's expecting that anyway.
yeah,
right?
I still expect that and I don't remember the percentage of revenue increase average versus the expenditure average, but we do expect that we will maintain a balanced budget and be able to continue to pay the programs after the 5 years is up.
So that revenue increase is coming from enrollment?
that's what I was.
Oh, the revenue increase comes, remember, that's why I gave you the assessed values. Because remember, the 2/3 of our budget comes from assessed values. So we forecasted out the assessed values.
So that's
Okay.
so it's the best guess that you have for
Yeah.
assessed value, assessed property values?
Yeah, the
All right.
3.7% increase.
Got it.
And then we had to do state revenue and then federal revenue, and those are the 3 revenue sources for our M&O.
What happens if we guess wrong? And we can't, I mean, we're not getting the revenue that we expect.
Well,
I
it
mean,
would be just like, and probably, hopefully not to the extent it was back in the Great Recession, where this district lost $100 million over 2 years, and we had to drastically reduce our expenditures. And, I keep telling people, and that's why, one of the lines there is for the $20 million added to the fund balance. We're living on a river, and it's not a question of whether or not the river will rise and flood us, it's just a matter of when. Now, I'm being, optimistic, and I think that the state of this economy right now in Texas, with our oil and our diversification, can maintain at least 10 years, which would be just enough time to pay off enough time to pay off the debt on the TRE side.
Okay.
The cost of the programs, I see, is increasing, of course. So is that based on the number of students that you plan to put in the programs, or the programs in themselves will be
Well,
more expensive in the
both.
5 years?
Both.
Both.
We are forecasting relatively, we right now have relatively slow growth, but we're growing anywhere between, I think, 500 to 700 students per year. We think that that will continue. We think that as the, and you're going to hear from the ERG people, is that our performance in this district is really doing really well. We think that that will draw in more diversification within the district, and so we will have more kids into the programs. And the program cost of 214 is to look into the future in terms of this is what we need, such as the pre-K. They want to, put a lot of money into pre-K to bring in younger kids and more of them, so that our programs will also improve. So, and then you saw the CT, and then the personalized learning, and you saw the money that they put into it. So this next slide shows you the cost of the taxpayer with 100K home. So if you've got a 200K, just multiply it by 2. So the annual INS cost, well, okay, maybe you have half of that, just divide it by 2. So the annual INS cost on the bond election, the average tax rate increase is 7 cents over the life of the bond. So that would mean a $70 average INS tax rate increase per year. I do footnote that there is a couple of high years where you're paying almost $90 per 100,000. There's no increase for taxpayers over 65 and older. On the annual M&O TRE side, you've got a tax rate increase of 13 cents. We're also looking at models at 12 cents and 11.5. Under 13 cents, then the cost to the 100K home would be $130 per year. No increase for taxpayers over 65.
But again, that's for a shorter period of time.
And that's
11
on the
years.
next slide.
So right now, this is what we have. So it's a tax rate increase of 7 cents per year. The TRE is 13 cents. The lifetime of the debt under traditional method is 30 years. Under TRE would be 11 years. So the total cost of the taxpayer in a 100K home over the bond would be $2,100, and for the TRE would be $1,430. Change in cost taxpayer was $65.99. TRE costs given and remember that the TRE gives us the additional $214 million for program needs. This then here is, Mike, what you were getting at in terms of the tax rate with the bond and the tax rate with the TRE. And what we did is we took into effect with the decrease in the INS would be, and so on the TRE side, you can see in the 11th year, 2027, I still have a tax rate of $1.32. However, at that time, the board could then reduce the tax. And it could do one of two things. This would be 11 years. So we know that the $1.5 billion we put into programs and facilities is not going to be enough. The needs for this district into the future is probably closer to $4.5 billion. So after 11 years, you then would have a choice to continue with that tax rate and try to restructure new facilities and programs using the TRE, or you could then drop the tax rate and go over back to the traditional bond and do a new bond election. So that would be up to the board and to the people of Dallas.
Jim? It
Yes.
sounds like the TRE has a lot of advantages. If for some reason we didn't do the TRE, could you structure the terms of the bond where it looked like the TRE, where it was paid off in 11 years rather than 20 or 30? Is that even an option?
Yeah, I looked at structuring a fixed rate at 11 years. And so that total interest cost is about $250 million. So if you're willing to do that, the The increase in the tax rate is going to be 13 cents.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
So it takes it to $1.41
yeah, same as
instead of,
the
well, instead of the $1.32, $1.33 in the TRE scenario.
Yeah, it essentially should, 13 cents, yeah, $1.40. In 2016, if you were to do it that way, it'd be $1.40, as opposed to $1.39 with $1.40. It'd be the same, because it is the same. 13 cents over on the,
But under the TRE, it goes down, so it starts at $1.39 in 2016, but it drops down to $1.32.
oh yeah.
But under the bond scenario, that would be just set for 11 years.
Well, no, you would do the same thing, is you just have to add 13 cents over here to this tax rate of $1.27, $1.26, and $1.26, and $1.27, because this takes into effect the reduction in the INS. So,
But just to pick a year, say 2026.
2026, so it would be $1.40, but that would be your last year, because that's 11 years, right?
Right.
And is $1.32. I need to look at that. I don't, yeah, I see your point. I don't know why that is. So I need to look at that.
I want to,
Go ahead.
well, I'm going to shift gears here.
No, it's fine. No, I have just a quick question. 24 cents to repay the debt. Are we capped in the state? Is it like
No, well,
50 cents,
they-
something like that?
yes,
Do we
50
pay?
cents.
50
On the
cents?
INS is 50 cents, but there is legislation that has been proposed to take that cap off.
Okay, thanks. I apologize.
No, I'm thinking about the Parsons report and the big picture. And to some extent, we've gotten ourselves in this position of, very low quality facilities by neglecting maintenance. Is that,
Yeah.
so it's like potholes, right, in the roads. So how much, if we were to say, well, from a operational general fund perspective, we want to maintain our facilities at a good level. How much do we need to spend on maintenance, and how much are we spending this year?
Well, the Parsons report says $1.8 billion. We're spending $15 million this year.
But I meant on an annual basis. So if we were to say we want
Right
to,
now, we've got in the budget $15 million per year projected out every year.
and
So it would
If
take
we were-
you 100 years to get it all caught up.
And we can't sell to
dude-
the taxpayers more
well, but
maintenance.
that doesn't even get you caught up, right? I mean, that doesn't even.
But do remember that what is happening with a lot of these facilities, the 1.37 you're putting in facilities, you're actually, and the same thing with the bridge plan, is that you are renovating and tearing down and building new facilities. So once you tear down or renovate, you bring the facilities up. So we're, in a certain sense, we've put in,
But then, right, I agree. But then are we going to change our ways so we're not just going right back into the ditch, letting the roads deteriorate again?
well,
Are we
I
gonna
don't know.
Are we going to up our maintenance
Yeah,
budget
I don't, well, we did. We put in $15 million into
relative?
deferred
So
maintenance.
what is it now before the?
15 million.
No, that's
the
the
year
additional.
Yeah, the year before was what, 0? 3 million? 0?
Well, there's also a plan, a preventative maintenance plan, so they come in and they do, which they haven't
Right.
done before.
That's
That's
right.
a new,
That's right.
so if they continue to do that,
Yes.
so.
I think the facilities under Wanda Paul, the chief over there, has done a great job in terms of putting the preventive maintenance program, and in fact doing something to. And remember, we're changing part of the HVAC with the QSCB bonds. So, and then the bridge program, 148 million, which is going to. So, in a certain sense, we've probably put in close to $215 million. Now that's going to be over the course of a couple of years, because the bridge is going to be over a few years. So the district certainly is doing a lot better in terms of addressing those issues in the facilities. Certainly a lot better than I have seen in my short career.
But if the two fellows sitting here were from Parsons, and I asked them, you know, what does our maintenance budget need to be if we want to maintain that good level? What would that number be?
Yeah, you would need to ask the Parsons people that. I don't know, but you've got to look at it also as in terms of what is the taxpayer willing to shell out. Certainly the $1.37 billion, even if we were to do the maintenance, it's going to cost them, for every $100,000, 70, and most of that 1.37 is dealing with, if you think about it, deferred maintenance, because it's either building new schools or it's doing renovations. So, how much could we handle? We could handle, $4.5 billion, but I've got a feeling the taxpayer wouldn't authorize $4.5 billion for us to fix all our facilities.
Are you hiring people from outside of the district, or are you training people within the district to help you with the maintenance? Are these all contractual kinds?
Oh, no. I think that's, again, you may want to bring in Wanda Paul to talk about the maintenance program. But she has a staff, and certainly they have what are called DOC programs, where they do bring in outside contractors to do some of the maintenance and deferred maintenance on the schools.
Okay, because I remember at one point in time they were trying to train people within the district to do the maintenance. But I'm not saying on everything, HVAC, minor problems.
I'm sure the part of the maintenance, deferred maintenance, is done internally. But I do know that some of it's done, externally.
Okay.
The next is 2 pages of assumptions. If you want to read that and grill me later, I'm more than happy to. And then the next 2 pages is the bond model. This bond model, I'm not going to go through every one of those columns unless you twist my arm.
Just what is MTN versus LRB?
It's maintenance tax notes. Maintenance tax notes is that what we can go out and sell, and that allows us to do renovations and modular buildings, or not modular, what do you call them? Portables. The lease revenue bonds, LRB, is what we would need to, the funding mechanism, we would need to do brand new structures. So, and that works through what's called the Public Facilities Corporation. So, make that kind of easy is that the board would set up a corporation which they would sit on and control it, but they then would sell what are called lease revenue bonds. And that would allow us to build new schools or new wings.
And is one of those associated with TRE and one associated?
They're both. This here is the bond model, and the next one is the TRE model, and the LRB would only be for the TRE model.
So your funding mechanism for the $930 million, the variable debt bonds,
Yes,
that's the Public Facilities Corporation?
yes,
Did
it
you
would
wanna
be
set up?
the public.
Well, you had me on your side until then, so.
Well, the public
Alright.
facilities, revenue bonds, and the maintenance notes, I would use variable rate debt in order to pay it back as soon as I can.
Then you want to use the Public Facility Corporation as the vehicle to do that, or the district does?
For the new, it's the only thing that allows me out of the general M&O fund in order to build new schools or new facilities.
Wow. Wow.
So, just briefly, without going through all the numbers, when we look at these 2 models, what should we be looking at? What's the big picture here?
Well, the big picture, I would focus mostly on the bond, and I would focus on the bottom totals. And you can see that the expenditures is 2.44 billion for the new 1.37 billion in debt. And on the other one is, we're looking at the sale of the 3 instruments here. But as I say, these numbers will change. This is preliminary. We've got to put in recapture into these models. So what we will do is we will rerun these tables and we will send you out the new tables. I'm more than happy to come back and go through the new tables with you all.
What's your timetable for taking this to the board?
Well, this is really running through the Future Facilities Task Force. So this was presented to Future Facility Task Force, and I believe they're going to go to their recommendation is in June, July. So it's a few months off.
So they'll make their recommendation in June or July, and then it'll go to the board.
Yeah, they go to the board with the recommendation. And I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date that they're planning to go to the board.
Any other questions for Jim before we let you go to Austin?
Great.
Good.
Thank you all very
Thank
much
you.
for your patience.
Thanks,
Dr.
Jim.
Berry.
I will have Richard Stragas is the Executive Director of Financial Analytics. He's going to come and introduce our next, come right up. Richard, introduce yourself and tell them all the good things about you.
Hi, good evening. I need to be sure there's no more questions on that presentation before I sit down here. So, thank you. I'm Richard Stragas. I'm the Executive Director of Financial Analytics and Control, as well as Payroll. And in our Financial Analytics and Control, the control isn't the traditional internal audit type, but it's more of using technology, process analysis and that to be more efficient. One of the projects we have now is implementing Laserfish to be more effective, whether it be inputting data into Oracle without keying, things of that nature. The financial analytics obviously is very KPI based. It's operational in nature, and it's very dependent on solid data. One of our tools that we use is ERG, and their goal is our goal, and that is to help clients, in our case it's the ISD organizations, be more effective and more efficient in what they do. The ERG tools achieve this by applying the sound operational techniques and modern technologies. And today we have 2 founding partners, Tim Tower and Paul Haberlin, which will walk through the tool and then of course answer questions that you have.
Can we bring up our presentation?
It's on the,
Yeah, the mouse. It's this one over on the side.
We have been in the business of performance evaluations in school districts for 16 years now, working with clients such as Dallas ISD to bring a little bit of a different perspective to look at school performance. If you talk about our accountability systems today, they're both mostly achievement-based. So the systems today, both financially and academically, treat all school districts as if they are exactly alike. So you're measured the same as a Highland Park, which obvious for anybody who's been involved in public education has a lot of weaknesses in that. And what we get from the state is a rating. Today it's either you've met standard or you need improvement, and you can't manage an organization of this size with a label. You need more discrete, better information to do that. So that's always been our task. And we talked primarily, and last Thursday I spent what was supposed to be 30 minutes in the briefing that turned into a 2-hour discussion with your board about the difference between achievement and performance. And they're both important to a school district, but what you can influence and control is performance. And the big reason for that is everybody knows that student demographics have a huge effect on outcomes. We wished it weren't so, but all of the analysis, many scholarly reviews all suggest that this phenomena exists and has existed for the 16 years that we've been involved in public education, which the basic message is there's a lot of things beyond the school district's control that influence outcomes, in the home and the family environment. Educational attainment levels, the natural aptitudes of the students, the incomes, and the English language skills that the parents have. We not only studied districts inside of Texas, we studied Texas versus Georgia versus Massachusetts. And the number one criteria that we found that has an influence on outcomes becomes a very high predictive tool to figure out, to assess what the expected outcomes will be, is the educational attainment levels of the parents in the home. That drives income and a number of other measurements. So if you really want to understand Dallas ISD and what kind of a job it is doing, you have to understand its demographics and how those demographics vary between you and an Austin and an El Paso and a Brownsville, because no two school districts are exactly alike. No two campuses are exactly alike. You've got campuses in Dallas that have high percentage of the socioeconomic students and very low percentages. And essentially what we've done is built modeling tools that allow us to say, based on studying actual school districts and campus performance, given a certain set of demographic characteristics, what would the model predict that a school would do? And what did they really do? Were they above the expected value or below the expected value? And then we use that as a primary measurement of performance. It's the easiest analogy to that is to talk about a height and a weight chart. If you go to the doctor, you get on the scale, they measure you, they look at your height, but when you go into the doctor, he uses those as inputs to determine, when I go in, he says, Tim, you're 30 pounds overweight, have you lost any weight? So the variances are what's really important. So when we look at Dallas, the chart that we have up right now shows the trend lines of Dallas, which is the red and the green lines, on your free and reduced lunch kids. And over the period that we're looking at here from 2007 through 14, you've gone from 84% to almost 90% free and reduced lunch kids. The blue line is how all the other districts in our model are moving at the same time. And they are not going up at the same rate that Dallas is. So you are confronting a trend of higher percentage of free and reduced lunch kids compared to your peers out there. And for the principals in the room here, I'm sure they can totally understand this. So we actually produce a system that will give you an achievement score, but it also gives you a performance score. And what we work with the school districts on is the performance, because like I say, it's a chicken or the egg problem. Do you work on achievement or do you work on performance? Well, what you can control and manage is performance. If you're successful in doing that, achievement will come. So you have to put performance at the top here.
Just a quick, in terms of
Sure,
the variable that you're using, is it strictly the percentage of economically disadvantaged students? I mean, you mentioned that the variable that explains the most is actually parental educational achievement. Are you able to use that variable? Or no?
We don't collect that data.
So what variables are you using then?
Well, what we did when we built the model, when we first got started, is we examined all kinds of characteristics. Is it English language learners? Is it special ed kids? Are it mobility rates? What factor had the greatest influence on outcomes? And by far and away, the one with both the highest correlation and the steepest curve was free and reduced lunch kids. So what we did then is we took that output and did a second regression to see if some other characteristic would significantly alter that outcome. And whether you threw in ethnicity, whether you threw in mobility rates, it had no statistically significant variance on the outcome. So we said if we just limit the model to a single regression variable analysis, it is accurate, and it is easier to understand than if you build a multiple variant regression model and try and sit down with a principal and explain exactly how a multivariate regression analysis works in predicting an outcome. For those of you who are familiar with FAST, who has a progress measurement, they have 32 variables in the model. Try and explain that to somebody. So the question is, to be diagnostic, what you have to be able to do is say, given these sets of characteristics, what element of my performance needs to be looked at and improved on? Because we use a balanced scorecard. We just don't measure star results. We measure graduation rates. We measure SAT scores, percentage of college-ready kids. So for years, we used an index. When we switched from the old AIS system to TAPR, the new accountability system, they now go to indexes, but nowhere in the system do they make any adjustment for demographics. So they assume Dallas's performance is going to be the same as Alamo Heights and San Antonio, which is a terribly unlevel playing field for performance measurement. And so I guess part of what we're here today to talk about is, how has Dallas been moving over time? The basic measurement, and I read the plaques on the wall, talks about fiscal responsibility. But we think the ultimate measurement of a school district is what we'll call a productivity number, which is how effective is a school district at taking its resources and converting those into outcomes. And historically, academic accountability and financial accountability, that's Jim's right and left pocket. They never were brought together. But by its very nature, that's how people should look at Dallas and determine, are you good stewards of my money? Are you taking this money, using it effectively, and getting outcomes? And the only way you can do that is through a performance model. When we last met with the commission was back in 2013, so we had the 2012 data. So we presented the chart that we have here, and we use a matrix to try and display the outcomes. So you can look at both finances and performance in the same framework. So a district gets rated from the 100th percentile to the 0th percentile in finance, 0 being worse, and from the 0th percentile in performance to the 100th percentile. And where you want to be is in the upper right-hand corner of this matrix. So when we made the presentation 2 years ago, the red dot right here illustrates where Dallas was. Its achievement numbers were in the 9th percentile. Its performance numbers, once we adjusted for the demographics, were in the 42nd percentile. So that's a significantly higher outcome. The finances were already in the 77th percentile. So we've always considered Dallas to be an efficient school district. But in public education, that has a very specific meaning, which means the funding formulas we have now just don't give you as much money as they give other people. Because essentially you're not a free enterprise where you can control your revenues. You can modify them by a TRE or something like that. But essentially, school districts get, you're one of the few that gets a lot of your revenues out of local revenues. You go to Brownsville, they get very little from local revenues, and most of it comes from the state. But essentially, it's a funding formula system that says you're going to get this much and Brownsville's going to get this much, and that's guaranteed. So if somebody's way over to the left-hand side of this chart, which means they're not using money efficiently, it's because the funding formulas are driving more money to those people. So to say, essentially Dallas has suffered from and will continue to suffer from, a lower revenue number out of the funding formulas. And I know Jim's rushing off to Austin to testify on Jimmy Don's new bill, which will totally alter the funding formula. One of the things when we talked to the TA about these formulas, it basically came out that the certainty of misery is better than the misery of uncertainty. And if they modify the whole funding formula, you got a whole new playing field. But one of the things they're advocating doing in this bill is to pull the CEI, which is the Educational Cost Index, out. And that also is a significant problem because it presumes that the cost of doing business in Dallas is exactly the same it is doing business in San Angelo. And we know that's not true. So, basing a model for allocating resources based on an assumption that your costs in Dallas are the same as San Angelo is going to be a huge benefit to San Angelo, and it was going to be harmful to you guys. We think the CI needs to be in there, and it needs to be brought up to date. It's 30 years old. But you guys have always been efficient. In 2012, being below in the yellow boxes mean you were below where we would expect you to be academically, so improvements were needed. So when we moved forward to 2014, this is where you moved. So you moved up from the 3-1 box to the 2-1 box, so you moved up and to the left. So that is the direction you want to be moving. Because where you want to move is up to the very up. So if you're moving up and right in the matrix, you're getting better academically and you're doing it with less money. Geez, that's a unique situation in public education, because it's normally said, I need more money to do better. I think we'll talk about that in just a minute. It's not how much money you have. In a poor organization, more money is just more money. In a good organization that knows how to use its money effectively, more money can be valuable, but otherwise not.
So do you see that same movement if the student achievement remains level, but the cost of providing it because we have less teachers goes down?
You would actually, because of the trigonometry of it, you would actually wind up with, if you look at what we'll call a hypotenuse, a straight line between your dot and that upper right-hand corner, it would get shorter. So if you're doing the same job with less money, I think most people would argue that's productivity.
But that shouldn't, will that affect your performance index? That's
No.
Separate, no. So it only affects the financial index.
You're constantly moving in two axes here. And when you start looking around the state at some school districts, and I'm going to show you a very contrarian view of Dallas performance compared to what I think the general perception of Dallas would be, switching from an achievement system to a performance system. But based on our framework of measurements, you've moved up into the left and pretty substantially. To move from 3/4 of the way through the 3 box to the midpoint of the 2 box, you've jumped over 50 districts in 2 years. That's a significant accomplishment.
You guys just flipped the grid around.
Yeah, we took a lot of criticism because we used to be on a ranking system from 1 to 200, which meant the lower left was where you wanted to be. And you talk about, everybody thinks that good has to be up and to the right. So we finally agreed. So what we flipped from rankings to percentiles, which flipped the matrix and put the green box in the upper right rather than the lower left. So if you'd have seen this presentation 2 years ago, good was down in the lower left. But the basic message here is Dallas has been improving in these 2 years in terms of resource management as well as achieving academic outcomes. And we'll talk about that for just a second. This is, performance management isn't just what you did at a point in time. It's not just a snapshot. You have to look at longitudinals or trends. So where I'm at and how I'm moving is what you're really interested in. And so this is a picture from the performance index, which again looks at 7 different academic metrics to come up with. So I think, if you look at this, Dallas went from the 25th percentile up into the mid, it's up at 58, 59 percentile, over the period of these years that we're looking at here. When I talked to the board on Thursday, I cited some statistics because we kind of throw percentage numbers around pretty casually. We talked about what that meant in human terms. What did that mean in students? And we were talking about if you were still at the same performance level you were in 2007, you would have about 3,000 students less meeting standard at the current phase-in level. You'd have 7,000 less students meeting standard at the post-secondary level, which is the college-ready level. And you'd have over 5,000 less students meeting the advanced level. So these have huge impacts on students because it matters to those 7,000 students what Dallas has accomplished in the performance side. You couple that with your finance side, and they just released the 2004 financials, so this is the first time anybody's really seen the 2014 numbers. But while your performance has been going up, your relative cost has been going down. And essentially what this says is you're operating about $1,200, $1,147 less than the model would predict. And our financial model is not only adjusted for demographics, we do make an adjustment for regional cost differences. So we know Dallas, has a very high cost to operate versus Luling, Texas, which has a very low cost. So we adjust for that to level the dollars across the state, and then we adjust for the demographics. So Dallas has a continued downward trend. It had a couple of pops in it. The green line is a 2-year moving average, but you can see generally you've been moving significantly towards a much more efficient operation. You're in the middle of the first quartile, which means there's very few people above you in terms of utilization of resources. So from the perspective of how you've been doing with the money that you got, our position is quite well. If I were an independent auditor looking to saying, do I have confidence in this organization's ability to take dollars and use them effectively, I think the evidence here would suggest that Dallas can be trusted to use the dollars well.
Can you state again, the blue line is what the model would expect Dallas to be on both
No,
of these?
that is what all the other 199 districts, if it were consolidated in one district, what it would look like.
Okay, thank you.
So you can see on the performance, Josh, that in 2007, you were 20, 30 points below your group. You've now caught the group and passed the group.
Got it.
You want to operate above the blue line here, below the blue line on the cost side. So performance going up, cost going down. When people say, well, I can't improve my academics while controlling and reducing costs, I'll send them up to Dallas. Talk to Dallas. What are you guys doing? You've been on a straight, downward trend, which means good in terms of resource utilization, while your academics have been improving significantly.
What's the green line?
The green line just takes a 2-year moving average of the red line to smooth it. Sometimes you get, particularly when you get into the sub-details of the model, you get a lot of volatility from year to year, and you don't want to react to a single year worth of data. So the 2 years just a smoothing to show a trend that's a little smoother than one that shows a lot of ups and downs. I know there's going to be...
we were emailed some data ahead of this, which is different, which is fun. It was looking at us versus Houston.
Mhm.
So I just want to be sure. So if I go back to page 4, Houston would nevertheless be a little farther up and to the right.
Houston would be straight up above you. You see that dot just at the edge of the 1-1 box up there, the lower? That would be Houston.
Okay.
They're very close to where you are academic, on the finances, but they are performing at a higher level than Dallas is. And the chart
Academically.
on the performance number.
Right.
And when you break it down into the components, there's some areas where Dallas is run by Houston. It still lags on the STAR tests, but when you look at other measurements like graduation rate, Dallas blew by Houston 2 years ago. Straight upward trend where Houston's been trending slightly down. College-ready graduates, you moved ahead of Houston on the college-ready graduates. So there's areas where you're not lagging Houston at all, you're leading them. And the one area where you're moving in the same direction, but you're still lagging them is on the STAR results. Now, if you look at the achievement number, it looks bigger because Houston has 80% free and reduced lunch kids, you got 90%. So their challenges there aren't quite as significant as they are here. They've been very flat at 80% for a long time. You guys have moved from 84 to 89. So you've been showing an upward trend in terms of the demographics. By that I mean more free and reduced lunch kids. So, but you're on the right trajectory. You're moving in the right direction on most of the indexes. The whole presentation on Thursday, once you move above the line, it is totally different than when you operate below the line. If you think of a marathon where you have the pack of runners that all ride together. If you run just a little bit faster, you pass a whole lot of people. But once you get out in the front, you got to run a lot faster to catch those people that are in front of you. So if you want to call it the low-hanging fruit, moving from the third quartile to the second quartile, it's a significant accomplishment. But now moving from the second quartile to the first quartile, which is where you want to be, you're running in a much faster crowd that has more separation between you and them than you had before. So you need better tools and better information, very, very targeted, specific actions. Every campus is unique. There is no one-size-fits-all plan that says if I do this district-wide, it's going to solve the problem. Because just like every district you see in these matrix, they're in a different place, which means the solution to their problem is totally different. We're going to talk to HEB tomorrow. They have a whole different set of issues they're working on than what Dallas is going to be working on.
And so just to pick up on what we were discussing before the meeting got started, so if I look at, again, on page 4, in the uppermost right-hand corner, you're talking Rio Grande, Valley View. Are those the dots I'm seeing up there?
The number one that you're seeing, they're there, but they're over in the 1-4 box. You see they're right on the top.
Okay.
They're good, but they're not efficient.
I see. So who are the top 4 winners there?
The number one at the top of the box up there is Richardson, your neighbor. They've been a great school district and have been ever since we started measuring them. Cy-Fair is up there.
Socorro.
Socorro, Conroe.
is number 3. Socorro's number 4.
Wow.
You
I'm
know,
surprised.
pardon?
I'm surprised Socorro is up there.
When you switch the lens you use to look at performance, there's a ton of surprises. When we first presented this to the legislature, we sat down and we said, we'll buy a steak dinner at the best restaurant in town if anybody can guess one school district that's in the 1-1 box. Because they're not your typical school districts. Everybody would say Highland Park, Carroll, Eanes, Alamo Heights. No, they're not in the 1-1 box.
If you know what they do, I mean, I can see Richardson. Socorro does surprise me because of the high ELL. I mean, that's awesome.
No, it is. You know, and somebody was mentioning maybe before the meeting about, you know, identifying and what you can learn from high-performing school districts, because our focus has always been in the 42 low-performing campuses. We tend to focus on the low performers, and there's very little to be learned from them. What you need to do is identify who the high performers are and study what they're doing. And from them, you can deduce what your plan might be to get there. And frequently, it's nothing more than saying, if I can show you 5 people who look like you that are doing 20 points above you, you can't do it or you don't want to do it.
So now I'm sure if we were to talk to the folks at Highland Park, they would have some bones to pick with your methodology, right?
Yes.
What would their most legitimate criticism be?
Many of the measurements, particularly the system's heavily biased towards star at phase-in. They made star at phase-in look exactly like tax at panel in 2011 for a lot of political reasons. And that whole end of the scale is compressed. There's no upward movement. You need to pick measurements that have upper and lower mobility. 2 measurements don't have that. One measurement is star at phase-in, the other one are graduation rates. They are stuck. Those people that have less than 10% or 20% free unit have no room to show growth there. So we have measurements that are inherent in our system that have those built-in constraints to them. And so we talk to Dawson Orr all the time. I said, yeah, if you measure them on advanced or you measure them on post-secondary, it's clear what a high performer they are. But because of those design restraints or constrictions on those 2 measurements, they're right on the line. They're not showing that they're 10 or 20 points above it. So if Paul likes to say if you're an offensive line coach and you have a scale that only goes to 200 pounds, it's probably not very valuable to you because everybody weighs 200 pounds.
I'm sorry.
No, Lucy.
But wouldn't Highland Park have a very high educational attainment rate for parents?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, if you look at them on the achievements
They're number one
scale,
in achievement.
they're off scale on achievement.
Oh, but they appear in the quarter, oh, okay.
Well, no, because this is a performance. So
This
this is,
is, it's both, they're just showing.
They're gonna be down near the line.
Yeah, if,
I was just saying, you had mentioned the educational attainment value.
yeah, no, I mean, you're dealing with kids who come from households that have, both parents have high educational attainment.
Right.
The average property value is $1.7 million per student. They have a lot of advantages, and the current accountability system or FAST don't take those into consideration when they're issuing ratings. Which achievement's important, of course, because that's how you get into universities and everything else. But you can't ignore the long-standing effects of the socioeconomic status of campuses or districts when you're trying to. And what we're trying to do is evaluate the effectiveness of your programs, your policies and stuff. We can't do that with achievement. So just to move through this real quick, so we've shown these two. This is just to highlight the point I said that this compares the district finance, how well you're spending money above or below versus high or low academic performance. Anybody familiar with scattergrams? There's a slight tendency for performance to improve as variances increase. But you can just see by the very pattern of the dots themselves, the R-square, which is a measurement of correlation, is 0. So for those who say, the silver bullet here is money, there's absolutely no evidence in the system that suggests money in and of itself produces performance. Effective utilization of that money can, but money by itself, if money counted, Washington D.C. would be producing Rhodes Scholars. Because we're sitting at $9,000 versus $19,000 a student, and Texas outperforms D.C. by a ton. The old constructs that said more money is the solution, there's no evidence to support that. And I just want to walk through, we take and create categories of expenses. So instruction, as we have it here, deals with function 11 through 13. The chart I have here is your absolute dollars per student. And you can see by the charts where you're at, how you're moving relative to the blue pack. This is what it looks like after we run it through the model. So you have quite a contrast between your actual spending per student and what the variance to the model would suggest. Since instructional services are 65% of your costs, this drives the school district to a large extent. We also looked at leadership services, which are educational leadership and school leadership, function 21 and 23 over time. And then we convert that into the model, and we can see where your costs look like they've been slightly down, your performance has been significantly down. You've been improving your efficiencies considerably in this area as well. Support services are function 31 through 36, so you have guidance and counseling, health services, transportation, co and extracurricular activities. So in this particular case, you've been losing a little bit of ground in efficiencies. But you're still operating high in the green zone, well below the blue pack. So we've been putting money into this area, but we're still maintaining a very high percentile here. And then the general support services, which include 51 through 53, we see some pretty significant movement in the model, but moving in the right direction. So when you put these four categories together, you get the overall operating efficiency of the school district. Our first peek into 2015 is looking at staff ratios. They give us the staffing numbers for 2015, so we can use this as a predictor of what we might expect. And this is a ratio like number of students per teacher. This is a number of students per staff. And you can see the number has gone down quite a bit in 2015. You're back to 2009-10 levels. So you added staff during the 2014-15 school year.
Now that's not per teacher, per staff.
Art?
You said that was not per teacher, but per
No,
staff.
these are total students divided by total staff FTEs. So it's like a student-to-teacher ratio. So you have 8 students per staff member, all staff categories. So if you think of 15 students per teacher, you got 8 students for every staff. Everybody who sits in this building all year.
Right, the staff isn't on-campus staff, is I think the
No,
question.
these are the total staff in the district.
Including teachers, just to clarify.
Yes, including
So,
teachers.
so we don't know from that though whether class sizes are bigger or smaller.
Well, this is, we break it down by group, and this is the instructional group. And you can see we went from almost 14 students per instructional staff down to under 13. So since that is the majority of your staff, in most school districts, half your staff are teachers, we have reduced, we can't talk about class size here. What we can say is for everybody classified as a teacher, you have more of them per student now than you did before. So we have reduced the student, the teacher, or instructional staff counts here. So if you look at this is a standard profile from the system. This looks at ratios. You want to be in the green. You can see in administrative staff and auxiliary staff, you're well into the green. The area where you have a lot of staff is in the professional support staff. You're in the 9th percentile. So you have a lot of, compared to everybody else in the state, you have a lot of professional support staff.
And they were back in that teaching staff though, right?
Pardon?
But they were also included in that.
Well, the
You said-
instructional staff is where the teachers would be. The professional staff are counselors, diagnosticians, health people. There's a whole list of categories that go into what's considered the professional support group. And the system itself will allow you to break that group down into specific role IDs and see, is it librarians, is it nurses, what is it, where we have a significant difference between, say, us and Houston. So if you did a side-by-side comparison of professional sports staff Dallas to Houston, you can see exactly what role Dallas does not compare favorably with Houston, or with Irving, or with Garland, or with whoever you want.
Tim, this is PEMS data that you're pulling the staffing information from?
Michael, we get the entire data file, just like we get the entire finance file. We get every single person by their role ID, and we assemble them to resemble what's in the PEM series of reports for staffing and compensation. But because we get the entire file, we can give you a lot more discrete breakdown of, now under professional support staff, I think we have 15 specific role IDs, so you can go isolate exactly where it is. Is it every single role ID in professional support where we're out of balance, or is it concentrated in a specific area? Because when you put benefits on top of compensation, Richard, I guess probably 80% of the cost of school district is right there. So manage the staffing model is what you have to do. So this just gives you tools to control staffing. What you have to pay for them, that's more a matter of the competitive markets that you're in. Dallas and Fort Worth happen to be the highest cost areas in the state in terms of getting any kind of a staff member. So cost is a function of how many you have and how much you have to pay for it. What you pay for it's more a function of the market. How many you have is more a function of what your programs are and what you're trying to get. And I know when Dallas had the problem, and Jim talked about having to dig deep into the fund balances, it was because we added 1,000 teachers into the system, which throws our entire ratios out of balance. It is going to drive costs tremendously. So, if you go look at very efficient organizations in our system, they are usually very efficiently staffed. And your overall staff number is good. I mean, the bottom line there is you're well into the green in terms of what I'll call your overall staff productivity numbers. So you're good. We clearly saw that you made an investment in teachers this time, because you were in the green before. On that first line, you moved into the blue because you've gone from 14 down to under, almost 15 down to under 14 in terms of instructional staff, students per instructional staff. So it's strategic investments, which is fine if we move the dot up on the performance line. Because we know this is going to move us to the left on the finance line. The question is, if you move over 5 points on the finance line, you get at least 5-point kick on the academic line. If you do, that'll keep you in relatively the same position. But if you move over on the finance and don't move on the performance line, it's just been more cost into the system with no benefit. And if we talk about performance being the benefit that you're investing the money for.
I mean, to some extent, when you look at instructional staff and you put them in percentiles, one's inclined to think that the green is the best, but it really is. It doesn't really matter so much. It's not one staffing ratio that's right or better than another. They're just, what are you getting out of it?
Yeah,
It's an input.
yeah.
It's one of the variables.
You know, it's the input, and we tend to focus on the inputs. By me, I don't mean me or our company personally, but the whole system tries to manage inputs. You know, what you're doing is, what you're trying to focus really on are the outputs. And there is no single model for success. You know, when we were advising, we talked to Senator Hutchinson when she was going to run for governor, and she wanted 20 best practices. And there is no such thing. I mean, what would work in Dallas may not work in Houston. It certainly wouldn't work in Brownsville. So every organization has to find what's critical to them and work on it. And what I told the board last Thursday is, the first thing you got to do is have tools that make sure you're working on the right thing. What is the right problem? And then the second thing you do is you work that problem right. So if you're working on something that isn't critical to the district and investing all your time and energy, it isn't going to solve, are you working on the right problem? So in my experience, and I know Michael was talking about being in turnarounds, that was my history for years of taking distressed companies and make them work. And normally they were focused on the wrong issues. If you get them focused on the right issues that can help move their organization forward, then do those issues correctly, you'll get some benefit. Probably the one lesson I learned out of turnarounds is that organizations fail not because they aim too high and miss, but because they aim too level and achieve. If you aim low and hit, that's not very good. So, but the tools are designed to give you information. So what are reasonable goals? First, what should we be working on? Is it graduation rates? Is it reading? Is it math? Where do the problems exist? And then how do I apply the resources to get those needles moving in the right direction? You have to have a framework and tools that allow you to say, I'm diagnosing the problem. I can set goals by looking at other organizations and see what's a reasonable target for me. I'm going to implement a program, and then I'm going to monitor and see if those programs have the desired results or not. Because my experience in the industry is we start a program and boy, we move off to the next program. Come back and look at whether that program achieved what you set. When you do the program, don't only run through the budget numbers and I need this staff. What are you going to do? What's the impact going to be? James Terry says, well, we're going to get this done X millions of dollars less here than the other way. Well, the same criteria exists everywhere in the school district, that if I'm going to invest money into resources, tell me what I'm going to expect from those resources. And then we're going to come back and visit it and see whether we got those outcomes or we didn't get the outcomes. That's how everybody, if Dallas wants to move up from the second quartile and the first quartile, that's the kind of discipline you need. So the tools that we talk about is, Dallas has improved in the financials we saw, but given the staffing ratios, I expect to see a decline in 2015 when those numbers come out this time next year. Academically, you're on a very nice run up. So keeping that momentum going and keeping the academic performance improving in comparison to other school districts, extremely important. And you need tools to help you do that. And the very first slide we had, which we didn't spend any, is performance is a relative term, not an absolute term. It's how you're doing relative to your peers. So I could be going up 3% on my star scores, but if everybody else is going up 5, I've lost ground. So I need to know how everybody else is moving, not in absolute numbers, but in performance numbers to understand that. So Dallas has the tools. They're moving in the right direction. My sense is, given the history, this isn't a 1 or 2 year trend. This is a very long, well-established trend. I would expect that Dallas would continue on the same track or do better. That's what we're certainly hoping for.
So on your last point here, has the district asked you to analyze the areas in need of improvement?
Well, I think based on the conversations we had with the board last Thursday, it is, now that we're in this position, we need better targeting tools. The old citing, through an open site versus through a scope. Because you've moved, as I said, from the left side of the median in the bell curve to the right side. It's going to take better tools to make sure, like say, you're working the right job. And so, Mr. Miles and the board said, let's get together and talk about how we can use these to more focus what the organization is working on. It's going to take, you're going to have to be more nimble to progress now as opposed to when you were behind the pack, if you will. So there was a commitment to do that, yes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Time.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Richard. Well, I was expecting Tim and Paul to be here for another 30 minutes, and Jim for another hour, but he had to run. So. In terms of the budget update, I have prepared. Actually, Tim and Paul touched a little bit about the expenditures by function as they went into some of those slides. I don't think I want to go into that since we weren't as well prepared as we thought we would be. But I do expect to have that by next meeting and give you a little more backbone to the numbers. So if you don't mind holding on to the function categories, what we'll do is we'll look at data more in terms of maybe 3-year data to kind of give you a comparison as we move through those. But you have that by function expenditures. That is all actually the data that Paul and Tim were talking about in their reports. So we'll drill down a little bit more. So what I thought we would do instead is focus on where we're at in the budget process. And I'll give you about a 10-minute and I'll have you ask questions to Richard. And he can answer them all. But there's a lot of moving parts, as you can tell. As you can tell from Jim's presentation, from ERG data, and we're studying the same data now, there's a lot of moving parts in terms of the legislature. And we don't really have a real clear picture of where we're going to be in terms of the revenue side. It's difficult to predict, but that's why Jim will be out there tomorrow morning first thing. They will be discussing one of the bills that's critical to finance, and that is the Representative Aycock bill. And let me tell you a little bit about it, if you haven't read about it. It is Bill 1759. And basically what this bill does, it does increase funding to all districts in Texas. The question is, how much does Dallas get compared to other districts? And I can tell you that the bill itself, the way it's written now, would not be as beneficial to Dallas as other districts. What do I mean by that? One of the key components of the bill eliminates what we heard earlier today about the cost of education index. In other words, it costs a lot more here in Dallas to educate a kid than it does, I can't remember the district he mentioned, it was a small district, but it does cost more. We have generate quite a bit of funding in that area. I think our ratio is 1.16. In other words, above the $1, we get an additional 16 cents per student based on that. This bill eliminates that. So what Jim will do tomorrow is not to not support the bill, because again, it's significant funding for the district, and ACOG is one of the representatives that strongly supports education, but we don't want to go beat up the bill and say it's bad for Dallas. What we will be asking for is to reinstate the cost of education index. If that happens, it could be a difference of approximately, let me see here, without CEI, Dallas would be getting about $38 million. With CEI, it would be about $60 million. So it is significant. So that's what we're going to be advocating for tomorrow. Also, the bill eliminates the high school allotment. It eliminates, we get a $500 and $250 staff allotment. And it will be eliminating some of those costs. We're still putting it into the model as to see what the major impact will be in that respect. What do we hope for? We hope that there's a bunch of districts that will be supporting, hopefully, the CEI. Houston, for example, the Austin, hopefully, will be advocating to reinstate that piece. So, will that happen or not? I don't know. But we're definitely going to try our best to support that. The second bill that it's on discussion is the Senate bill. The Senate bill 2 will increase our basic allocation to $51.34 for the first year and $51.40 for the second year. And it would also increase the Austin yield from $72 to $76. What does that mean for Dallas? That bill itself would generate about $30 million the first year and $34 million the second year. Why am I telling you this comparison? So you can see that the ACOG bill puts a lot more dollars into education. If we can only influence some of the components in it, it might be beneficial to Dallas ISD. That's where we're at. There's a couple of other things.
But so what you're saying is, even if you don't get the CEI incorporated, we're still better off with the ACOG bill.
At this point in time, yes.
But even then, it's not going to be one or the other, right? It's going to go into some reconciliation process.
That's exactly correct. So those are the types of discussions. Again, I think they only have about 4 or 5 weeks left, and there hasn't been any talk about a session after the legislature, so we're hoping that it will be resolved sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. That puts us in a position of trying to, again, figure out what our budget looks like and what our requests of expenditures, and try to line them up. That's the difficult part that we're having now in terms of building the budget. Do we have an assumptions list? Absolutely. Do we have the process in place to continue what we do? Absolutely. What have we done so far? We have coordinated as of Friday, all the campuses have met with the principals and the EDs and the staffing individuals from HCM to come up with the staffing models at each campus. What do? We calculate based on ratios, and you've seen the staffing ratios, and I think I shared that in one of the first meetings with you. We do that, and it's purely simple. It's a formula-driven type of model, so we just spit it out. Once they meet, and some of the principals are here, so you can certainly share some of your experiences, they go and they actually look at all the programmatic needs of each campus. If you, for example, are an IR campus, you're asking for additional resources to come out of that status. There's also, for example, IB programs that we're supporting, dual language programs, and the formula doesn't take that into consideration. Some of those ads that come back in are as a result of that. Is that accurate? Am I?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Because we're actually on my campus losing a couple of positions, and we had some positions that were granted because of our IR status, and as of right now, we're not getting those back.
Okay.
I'm also getting ready to lose my social worker who was instrumental on my campus as well as my community liaison. And I was asking them back, but I found out that I couldn't get them back.
Okay. These are the types of conversations.
They're being funded through IR funding, and the other one was Title I.
Title funding, correct. But these are the types of conversations that occur at each campus with each individual principal. Paul and Tim talked about page, I think it was page 11. If you look at that trend, back in 2011, 2012, remember we went through that cutting mode and we started improving in that area. Now we're getting into our staffing being per student less. That green arrow is going down. What does that mean? That means we have been adding quite a bit of staff, proportionally more obviously at the campus level. For many reasons, to support I-2020, to support our campuses, to support additional programs. Jim talked about school choice. There's some of those are going to come, the impact of FTEs are going to be incorporated into our budget process. Remember, we're doing 4 personalized learning campuses and 2 new campuses this year. That will be Halsey is opening again. 6th grade is a STEAM campus. There's the second one. Harley as an early childhood pre-K center. And the new personalized high school that hopefully will has also been approved through the bridge plan. What am I saying? We're adding quite a bit of staff for new programs, for things that the campuses are requesting, and that number is increasing in terms of FTEs.
Mr. Prado, but I had a question. And you guys increasing those numbers at those campuses, is that going to affect the rest of our campuses? I mean, I'm just asking because you're taking FTEs, to add to new campuses.
Absolutely.
How's that going to affect our campuses? Like my campus, I have 5 distinctions.
Correct.
We've worked hard to get there.
Absolutely.
But yet I'm being told, like at my budget meetings, you have to have 24 kids in 3rd grade, and you can just write exceptions. I mean, I requested an extra teacher because we did that this year, and it's very hard to have, I have 3 3rd grade classes that have 26 kids in each.
Correct.
That's a lot of teachers. 5th grade classes with 27 in each, 28 in each. I'm just saying, will that affect it? I mean,
It will not in terms of the, of course, it's up to the, to the principal and the EDs to have that discussion in terms of what the appropriate model for staffing is at each campus. It will not impact your staffing to open other campuses. Now, why do I say that? The reason I say that is because unless all the students from your campus were going into this new campuses, then obviously there would have to be some adjustments. Unfortunately, that's not the case for these new campuses. We are pulling students from all over the district. So we get 3 from your campus, 2 from your campus. That's not enough to go and reduce FTEs at your campus. So what we have to do is build those assumptions as if we're opening a brand new school. So I have built assumptions for those 4 campuses as to how much it will cost to support those campuses besides what I've added to your campus. Now, at one point in time, maybe in leveling or next year, we'll see kind of where the numbers kind of lay. And if I get a bunch of kids from yours, obviously we will have to make those reductions. So those are the types of things that we're contending with right now in terms of the moving parts. And again, we just finished that. We just got the data from HCM on Friday. We did some preliminary analysis this weekend. We'll continue to drill down in terms of, hey, this is where we were, this is where we want to be in terms of staff, and this is what the requests are. I can tell you right now that the requests are way above what I anticipated, but I always anticipate lower, and I always push for lower numbers regardless. I'm on the finance side. I understand the instructional side as well, but it's my job to keep those numbers and say, hey, can we afford it? And so that's what we're trying to do right now in terms of aligning revenue, what we're projecting, and what the expenditures will be. That's at the campus level. That's the biggest piece that we're focused on. In terms of the central side,
Before we get,
go ahead.
were there any changes in the staffing ratios for this budget cycle versus last budget
None.
cycle? Okay.
No staffing ratios changes. But
So the increase in pre-K where you have to have a, what, an FTE and a half per 10 kids or whatever, I can't remember what the ratio is.
we haven't implemented that into our model yet.
Okay.
Because it's a bill, you're right, it's a bill that's being proposed, but we haven't seen anything on that yet.
Okay.
Whether it will move forward or not. Right now, what we're proceeding with pre-K is 1 teacher and 1 TA per 22 students. And we have seen a slight increase in the last couple of years in that area. We're hoping with this big push for early childhood that we'll get a lot more this year. As you probably have seen, we've had a huge advertisement going through Dallas to kind of push and get parents out there to sign up their kids. So hopefully we'll see some good results out of that area.
But from a financial point of view, that creates other stresses, right? Because the state is only paying for half day.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. But one of the commitments that the board made early on, about 4 or 5 years ago, I think it's about 4 or 5 years ago, was that we would support full day pre-K,
Right.
regardless. But you're right. It's a good, it's a fair balance and a fair statement to say that it's costly.
So if you're hoping for and planning for an increase in pre-K, where are those additional dollars staffing coming from?
So there's a couple of components. Obviously, we will support that. So the second thing is we're hoping, and there's a big push at the state level,
Right.
that we will get some additional pre-K funding. Now, to what extent, I don't know. I think our projections are, Jim is very conservative on this one, I'm not sure why. He normally is a little more aggressive than I am. I think he's projecting about $10 to $11 million. My figures were more in the $20 million range. But again, it all depends on which bills are moved forward. If we were to get funding, for example, for full day pre-K without any attachments, we would be okay. But the funding bills that are being proposed right now, for example, have some additional requirements. As what Michael stated, hey, you have to have a ratio of 1 to 10 and things of that nature. That will put some more pressure in terms of our finances.
Do you have the facilities for them?
So that's the other piece. The other piece is the facilities and having the facilities at the right places where the students are. Again, that is part of this big push, whether we go through a bond program or through a TRE, where we need to place those facilities to serve the students where they're at.
Was that part of your bridge program?
That was part of it, yes ma'am.
Okay.
So Gilbert, who can we put this on the agenda for this next meeting about the Public Facilities Corporation? Because it's a bit disingenuous, in my opinion, to talk about variable debt bonds and lease revenue bonds without the people at this table understanding what a PFC really is. And who's the expert in the district? Is it you or Jim or?
There's a lot of expert. No. So the main contact would be Jim. I can certainly, this is what we can do. We have one more meeting. I think the focus of the meeting that we really want to focus on the next meeting will be the budget and the full scope of where we're at in terms of giving you a very good view of where we're anticipating to be for the following year.
But I don't think people understand that this $930 million that we want to borrow, we're not going to own those buildings. The Public Facility Corporation is going to own it. We're just going to lease them back. And the PFC doesn't even have to give those buildings back to us at the end.
So what I propose is that Jim does some sort of write-up and distribute it to you guys for information on that basis. Now, if you want him to have a little more discussion on it on the next meeting, but at least you have some stuff to look at before we talk about it, I can talk to him about that. Is that?
That's
good.
That's fine.
That's good.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
I have a vague understanding about the current function of this committee.
Okay.
and how we are helping the district.
Okay.
I don't have it, and perhaps it's been given out. I'm a little ambiguous about what are we really supposed to be doing. I know we're getting the feedback and we're getting information, which is really very good information, and of course the staff is working very, very hard. But are we just a sounding board, or do we give any?
So I'm going to kind of restate a couple of the things that when the superintendent presented and the discussions that Josh and I and the superintendent and a couple of other individuals have had. One of the things that the superintendent really wanted to focus on was CBRC, are we spending the dollars where we're saying that we're going to spend dollars at? Now, correct me, Josh, I mean, I'm being
Yeah.
very high level.
Does the budget align with the
With the action
long-term
plan,
district
that's what I
goals?
was-
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
That's
supposed
what
to be
we're-
looking at the action
And
plan
it
and
has to be
budget.
looked at, you look at it at the campus level, don't you, or do you kind of do
We
your
do
plan?
look
your
at
plan?
like,
Right.
but what I was thinking that we were supposed to be doing is looking at the district's action plan and aligning the Destination 2020 and all of those goals to see if the money was aligned to those key actions.
Correct.
That's right.
But we haven't did that, we've been reviewing these other pieces, so I can see
Well,
where.
yeah, and
the
basically,
purpose
you do
didn't
that
kinda lie.
in-house, don't you?
Correct.
You basically have to do it in-house to come up with a plan. You look at your finances and then you make your plan. So
Correct.
it actually has been done, but you're asking us to look at it?
So there's a couple of things that I've shared with you. One was
Second set
destination.
of items.
That's correct. Destination 2020 was the document I sent you, and a lot of the things that we've been talking about are a component of that. Early childhood is a huge component of Destination 2020. CTE, Career and Technology, what Jim talked about, the reason we need TRE to support this program, that's a huge component of Destination 2020. So all those components are in the plan. Now, one of the things that we're responsible for in the budget office is to track, more so, the district action plan, meaning the superintendent has told us, okay, this is what we're going to do this coming year. And there was a document I think I shared with you as well, where he defined, was it in Destination 20, was it in Destination, I think it's in Destination 2020, where he says, these are the things we're gonna do this next year,
Yes.
okay? And he allotted X number of dollars for those pieces of it.
Yeah, so,
So that's the big push this year,
right.
to push for those items. Now, so one of the responsibilities, are we actually going to do that? My presentation on next,
That's what you want to do next meeting.
yes,
But the campus plans are based on that plan if you are part of that Destination 2020, right? And you write your plans when?
We are
At the
working on
beginning
our
of next
plans,
year?
like,
No.
and the SPDM this month, next month,
Right.
So all of that.
Our campus level plans are due in June,
yeah.
and it's aligned to the district action. plan.
Action plan, right, okay.
When is this going to be presented to the trustees, your first budget recommendation?
so we have attempted on 3 different occasions to do that. Once it was canceled because of the weather, a couple of other times, one other time I think we didn't have a quorum, so we can get there. We are right now trying to schedule a workshop, and it should probably be in the next week or 2. That's what I hear.
And by the way, those workshops are open to the public.
Right.
Should we be there?
I'm going to be there.
You can, certainly.
I mean, if we're to align the budget to the plan, help align the budget to the plan.
Certainly, it's open, and normally it's in this type of setting
Yeah.
where we'll do a presentation. Again, a lot of the pieces that I'm telling you now, we've shared with the board, but we just don't have the concrete numbers to really say, hey, this is where we're gonna move. So for example, just to give you a couple of,
But you're not going to have those numbers until after the legislature.
Legislature's done.
we will have in the next week or 2, we anticipate to have a closer, hopefully, direction on how to move. It could change, absolutely. But we'll be more comfortable in sharing that in the next couple of weeks.
Direction on how to move.
The revenue, the revenue streams?
Oh, the revenue, oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, but I just met with 3 trustees on Monday, and they're all concerned because they're not so much concerned on the revenue side as much as the expense side, because they haven't seen anything from you guys. And we haven't seen anything here, and I think that's the point that Lucy may have been bringing up,
Yes,
so.
I understand.
So there's a couple of things. Let's talk about our budget process, which I kind of talked a little bit about in our first or second meeting. The biggest piece of our budget is where? At the campus level. Okay, we know what that is. Now, what I've stated earlier is I need to know what the requests are being made right now, and that's what I'm in the middle of analyzing. But the biggest piece is always the campus. I mean, that's the biggest driver. In terms of the campuses, there will be some slight increases. We projected that. Now, do the requests right now match what we projected? I can tell you that that's no. There's a lot more requests than what we projected right now, just from a very high level analyzing the data. On the central side, the way we build the central side budget, that means my organization, everybody else, Richard's organization, we start with a base budget. In other words, whatever you had last year to support that operation is what you will have the following year. Any additions to those expenditures is what we call the district action plan. Those are the figures that I said I shared with you on the I-2020 program. Now, it started with $26.8 million. That's what the I-2020 document indicates. That's the district action plan. That number right now is now $26.8 million. That number is way above that.
In terms of the requests.
The requests from the central side. So what do I mean by the central side? So for example, district-wide initiatives. If we want to give, and this is the proposal at this point in time, and the board has been told this, is that we're projecting to give teachers, teachers are going to be on the new TEI model. We know what the cost is going to be. We've shared that with you. We anticipate it's going to be about $20 million. Correct? You don't remember that? It's okay. Somewhere around there.
Is that the
It's
reason
okay.
why you would lose a social worker and a community liaison because of the cost of the other?
That is driven, what the loss would be, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's not driven by formula, first of all, those allocations. Those are based on the need of the campus. Now, if you're stating that it's still a need, right, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
And then someone, ED or someone said, I don't think so.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So that has nothing to do with the staffing model, but also the additional staff that he has had this year to support that.
But like, what I noticed, I guess when the free lunch thing, the applications, it caused, since lunch is free for everyone, the number of applications impacted some of the 211 funds. If you didn't get all your applications in, then there wasn't a true number of how many ED students that you actually had on your campus, and that determined the amount of dollars that you received. So for my campus, it's estimated that we're going to go down. So that meant that I had less money, and I ended up having to say, okay, I'm not going to be able to afford another teacher, because I had to take off a teacher too, because I did receive less money. And that teacher plus their benefits was making like $70,000. So with that, I could get a TA to do the computer lab instead of paying a $70,000 teacher to do the computer lab. So we had to make those sacrifices.
Well, a community liaison out of Title I has
Like
nothing to do with
Exactly.
your at-risk kids.
Well,
So-
it's
I mean,
come from the
as far as
school
giving
11
the
money.
money, because the money is coming from the federal. from
So we are
another
talking
grant
about
program.
two different funding mechanisms.
Right,
What
right.
we were focused earlier was the general side. What you are referring to, she's absolutely correct, and that is the federal Title I allocations.
And that's what the community liaison comes out of the
Got
title
it.
fund.
So what you're saying is you can't afford any further on your federal side allocation. So you have to understand the mechanism for federal sources. Okay, so the I can certainly talk about Title I.
Gilbert,
Yes,
can,
sir.
can we just go back to simplifying, because you made a statement saying that you expect the campus request for funds to be higher this year, whether
Because
you
we're
start
paying
at a
for more
zero-based
teachers.
budget or whatever.
Correct.
And that the superintendent and the administration expect central expenditures to be much higher, more than the 20-some-odd million dollars that was talked about for 2020, right? So when you pay for what Central wants, it has to come out of the campuses, right?
No. So you have to understand what I mean when I say central. Those are programs that obviously are going to benefit the campuses. I'm just capturing the central level at this point in time.
Okay.
So TEI, while I'm capturing the cost centrally right now, that is going to cost me $20 million, it's not for central organizations. It is for the campuses. Obviously, it's a teacher excellence initiative. It's for the compensation of teachers. I'm just capturing right now in a central pot right now. Hey, these are the things that I know are coming up. That's what I mean when I say centrally. So another thing.
So it's a top-down estimate.
Yes.
Like our station maybe, like how the district purchases iStation, which is a program, but we don't have to pay for it out of our budget.
That's exactly
The
right.
district pays for pre-K2 to take for everybody.
So that's what I mean when I say, so for example, let me give you another, I'll give you two other examples. Right now, where TEI is going to cost us $20 million, I already stated that approximately, a 3% raise for all other staff. Okay, that's the proposal. That has a, how much did we put in there? For staff, almost $10 million.
Out of the 20 million.
No.
That's in
This is
addition.
on top of that, okay? Employer TRS contribution, I think I talked about this. The state is not gonna fund that anymore. It was a one-time deal. Hey, you get it for this year, but next year you're on your own. That's $11 million. Those are the types of things that I am capturing when I'm saying I'm getting $50 million more revenue, but here are the big expenditures that are coming up, and I'm trying to line those up.
So are you going to use any of the Title I funds for the TEI?
Title I funds.
No, I know how it's supposed to be used, but I'm just hearing.
No, ma'am, absolutely not.
Something is deleted on one end, and I know
Well,
you can't really do that.
Let me just state it in this fashion. If a Title I teacher falls under whatever performance they will be in the compensation model, Title I will obviously cover that for that Title I funded FTE. No, we wouldn't take title
I'm
funding
just trying to.
and moving it to, absolutely not, that's totally not right. Yes?
I'm sorry, are you Ms. McCoy?
Yes.
I want to come back to her point.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if one of the unintended consequences of providing free lunch for everybody is that you're now having an under-reporting of Title I students, and is that costing, first of all, is that costing any money from the feds?
So we are.
Because we're going to show,
losing money.
because instead of 89% free and reduced, we're going to drop down if people aren't claiming it.
So that is a something that we're definitely exploring right now, and we're seeing how that has. We started this process about a year ago, trying to figure out what the impact would be. We didn't know it was going to be this drastic in terms of the
It's
percentages.
been terribly difficult to get those documents signed.
Because
So-
people get the lunch anyway.
Right, so
Right.
the parents don't fill in the form
they don't
and
put-
print
so
it back.
it's gonna go back to the
We literally
campus.
send them out with the kids constantly.
Right.
Yeah, literally 2 months ago, we had several students who did not report.
Correct.
Their transition report. And so I got an email that said I was gonna lose $7,000 in title funds. So I had to put a team together, we had to hustle up, call these kids to the office, get them to take these forms home, did home visits, to get these things signed, just so we wouldn't lose that $7,000.
Right.
So that's what that.
So is there some thought to, what's the conclusion here? Where are you?
We are definitely looking into that and how the impact will be. As a matter of fact, it's one of the top things that the superintendent talked about this morning as an impact that we definitely need to explore. Now, let me answer the question about the funding piece. In terms of the title funds, it does impact campuses. Some will benefit from this, by the way. Okay? You will have some campuses that they had low numbers before, and now their numbers are up. So there will be campuses that will get additional title funds. There will be some campuses as well that will lose it because that number came down.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of this. In terms of the federal entitlement for federal, that will not be impacted. Why do I say that? That is based on the census. Every 10 years they do a census, and that's where our funding comes from.
So it's a census, it's not a reporting through the district.
It was based on whatever the free and reduced lunch at that point in time was, so we don't expect it to impact the entitlement at this point in time.
Until the next census.
That's exactly right. What it does impact is the state compensatory education funding. Now, what impact that is, I haven't calculated and I don't know what it is yet. So there is, on the state level, there will be a financial at this point in time.
So in terms of order of magnitude, where are we now in terms of reporting or claiming a free and reduced lunch this year versus last year?
I think it was around 90% last year. We're at about 85 to 86% right now.
Okay. Is there any thought, does it make any sense to go back to the old system where not everybody got it?
No.
Does it provide an incentive?
There's the question is what type of incentive can we create to get this in?
Get them in there.
We're looking at alternatives. I don't know what the whole group will end up deciding on how to approach it, but I can tell you that it is an item that we're definitely looking into quickly.
But going back to the old system, where the only way you got the lunch was if you reported, is not.
It's not an option.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we've been, one of the departments that tracks that is the Food and Child Nutrition Services. And I mean, they were part of the group, and we're looking at ways on how we can manage that.
Wasn't it, once, if they didn't have their papers in at a certain time, after the deadline, they would be given like peanut butter sandwiches. It used to happen at some point.
Yeah.
Right now, since all of the lunches are free, there's not any incentive to
You have to
fill out the
hustle, and
papers.
then it doesn't become a priority until you get that email saying, hey, you're gonna lose $10,000 if you don't find these children, because it's saying that you no longer have this amount of students who are economically disadvantaged. So, as principals, we knew, okay, our kids are getting free lunch, but we didn't know the importance of get this form back, until
So
that email. So now it's about having systems in place.
this doesn't ease your pain, but as before I was leaving to come down here, we were looking at how do we minimize the impact on the campuses that are losing funding. So as heartless as I might look, we are looking at that right now. As a matter of fact, Jim was a big proponent of trying to mitigate that and minimize what the campuses will be losing. I definitely feel your pain, and I've seen the numbers. I mean, there's some campuses that would lose significant numbers, and you might think that $10,000 is not enough. I mean, it's not a big amount, but when it comes to funding an FTE,
yes, it is.
it's significant. So we certainly understand that, and we're trying to figure out that piece of it. Now, with title funds, you have to remember, we only have a set amount of dollars. Remember what I said? Our entitlement is based on, so we know how much we're going to get, right? So in order to give more to one side, we have to look at other programs and start figuring out, okay, which programs do we eliminate to support this? So it's a balance. I just want you to understand the mechanism. It's not totally that we don't want to give the campuses. I mean, if we could give the campuses all the money and let them spend it, then we have to figure out a way on how to spend it, because I'm having that issue as well with some campuses that are not spending the dollars effectively, or when I carry $7 to $8 million or $10 million every year from one year to the next, that's telling me something. So we're also trying to address that on how do we communicate that, how do we help, how can we be better assistants and produce systems and areas of improvement. So that's the other challenge that we have.
I think I've taken us,
Yes.
get us off track here. You were starting in sort of the process, and maybe you're going to get to Lucy's point of, okay, so where does the committee,
absolutely,
jump in here with whatever it's going to say?
I think in the next meeting you're going to have much more clarity as to where we're at, and are we putting the dollars where we said we were going to put it. So for example, GM's TRE, there's a cost associated, the bridge plan piece. There is a cost to the maintenance notes that we're going to have to the tune of about $1.8 to $2 million in interest that I have to budget on the M&O side. So all these things that we've presented to you have a financial impact. The hope is, part of the hope is that you guys will come and tell us, you know what, they are putting the money where the district action plan is saying they're going to invest in. The second piece is, why did we have ERG here? ERG is telling you, are we doing a good job or are we not? That was one of the second charges, was to see if we're effectively spending our dollars. Are we managing our dollars effectively? That was the second main responsibility that we talked about. Now, I had intended to give you a presentation on the function costs compared to other districts, but I don't have all that data today to give you that. So our hope is in the next meeting to give you some more comparative data to other districts and see how we're comparing each other in terms of the finance. That will give you a good sense of whether we are spending money, even though ERG said we are, right?
No, they didn't. ERG did no evaluation of the programs inside the district. They said that right here as we were sitting here. The ERG did not evaluate our programs or the effectiveness of our programs. They did. Go ahead.
They did say what?
No, they did say that that money is a component of their evaluation, but they did not do, I had a conversation with these guys for the last 3 years.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that was part of the presentation, was to give you an idea of where we stand statewide in terms of our position. And one of the things, the financial data that they presented today, by the way, I didn't even have a chance to look at it till just now. But again, I got to go back and study that data and get with Richard's group and see the areas of concern if we have some areas of concern. But again, that's the second charge. Is there anything that I missed based on that?
No, those are the two.
So what are you looking for the committee to do?
So,
and when?
Josh, do you want to talk a little bit? Josh and I had this conversation, and you want to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, the overarching theme was to report back on those two pieces. On
Are you talking about reporting to the school board?
Yes, yes, reporting to the board on those two pieces. And as far as the timeline and how the delivery, I don't know what we've decided on that yet.
I think we need to go back to the drawing table a little bit on that, as to when you present that to the, our goal was to definitely by the June briefing, obviously, but the earlier the better. Our next meeting is on the 19th. That will be after the board briefing that month, so I think that would be a little, obviously our meeting will be later than that, but we knew this was going to be an issue when we were trying to schedule the meetings.
Right.
So hopefully soon after, again, I can present as much data as you want me to on the next meeting. In terms of a response or a statement to the board, I'll leave it to you guys after that meeting as to the timing and whether you as a group want to meet separately without my influence in any form or fashion, or that sort of thing. So we can certainly have that discussion as well.
Okay. Does that answer your question? I mean,
Well, I want to make sure we don't miss our window.
Right.
To say something.
yeah.
So, and leave, you know, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to convene as a group to say whatever it is we want to say.
Has the board had an opportunity to look at the plan and make any comments or approvals or anything up until this point?
On which specific item?
The 2020, that's what we're supposed to be looking at, right?
So,
on the 2020 plan.
Yes, the board actually approved the 2020 plan
Okay.
maybe a year or 2 years ago. So they have actually approved the plan. Now what the administration is doing is building or implementing components on a yearly basis of the plan. So if you recall, it started with EVs and the feeder program side, and then I-2020 was another big initiative. TEI is a big, huge initiative now. Personalized learning, another huge component of I-2020. Those are all components of that plan.
Right, and we have seen some portions of that,
Correct.
which stipulates the fact that you have the funds for these programs.
So that is what we're trying to figure out right now.
Okay.
Now, again, by next, hopefully by next meeting, obviously we'll have more concrete numbers,
Okay.
things that I feel confident that. I mean, I can tell you right now that our projections say that we're going to get $60 additional million. The numbers I told you earlier didn't state that, correct? But that was my original projection, is that we were going to get, Jim's and I, a net of approximately $60 million additional dollars. Well, those plans are not supporting that $60 million at this point in time. Again, but it's not game over, it's the beginning of it. They really are getting into the finance pieces now down in Austin, and we'll be very watchful. We have been meeting as a group for bills for approximately 8 weeks, tracking some of those big bills, tracking some of the impacts that might have on the district, and so we've been very proactive in that area.
But Gilbert, we can't affect the revenue side. We can affect the expense side. So, you know, if the schools, the classrooms are going to give us some estimates on what they would like.
Correct.
And the superintendent has his district action plan, and you know approximately what that's going to cost, then those are the numbers we should be looking at now, right? So that's what the superintendent charged us with 4 months ago, is looking at those numbers and trying to see if we can reconcile what the classroom folks want versus what the district action plan is. But we haven't seen any numbers. I think that's where we're having a bit of a disconnect here.
I don't disagree with you. I've given you the big pockets of the financial impact of those numbers, like TEI, the bridge plan, things of the nature, the ones that I know for certain are going to move forward. On the other ones, the process right now is, in the first meeting, I kind of show you the model of how the budget moves in terms of the planning pieces. Right now, what's happening is the chiefs, the superintendent and the chiefs are deciding, okay, we have $60 million and you're asking for $100 million. Obviously, that's not going to happen. What are the things that we need to prioritize on this expenditure side to get more in line with the $60 million? That is what they're doing right now. As a matter of fact, I gave them that data this morning. They're going to discuss it again on Thursday, but that is part of the process where the chiefs and the superintendent will decide which pieces are going to move forward.
So this group has no input to that at all then?
In terms of the items that will move, that the administration is recommending, is that what you're asking?
what input do we have if you're saying that everyone else is making these decisions and we aren't even looking at numbers yet?
So if there's,
I mean, this is very different than the way this group operated just 2 years ago. So I'm just trying to figure out why I'm even showing up here if you guys are making all the decisions.
Okay, so I stated the two responsibilities. I've given you the dollar amounts, the cost of some of the expenditures I know are moving forward. I have given you that on TEI, for example. I think this is the third time I say that it's going to cost us about $20 million. I know the big pockets. The 3% raise for all other staff is going to be approximately $10 million. All I need to do now is put all these things together and present them to you. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I'm saying by next meeting I will do.
And so by the next meeting, you're going to have
pretty much the budget
narrowed down what you think the budget is going to be. Because
absolutely.
Among the concerns, I can't speak to every concern Mike has, but I have to mention one of the concerns is, you know, if the revenue increase is going to be less than that $60 million that you notionally had in your minds at the beginning.
Correct.
Right? What doesn't get funded, or does it come out of the campus?
No, it doesn't come out of the campus.
So what doesn't get funded?
What does not get funded? So, for example, we could go back and say we can't afford the 3% raise. I mean, those are the tough decisions that the administration is going to have to make. Things of that nature. But we know we're going to move forward with TEI. We know we're moving forward with PL. We know we're moving forward with the new campuses that we're opening. Those we know for certain are going to move forward. The things that the board has discussed and they have actually approved to move forward with.
So you have funding for all of those guarantees?
We have identified from the revenue sources that we're anticipating that will cover those costs, yes. Now, there might come a point in time where we don't get all the revenue, then the administration, the chiefs would have to determine some other programs. Maybe we can afford all the I-20, I mean the feeder program. I'm not saying that we're going to cut them. But those are the kinds of things and decisions that we'll have to make. If we were to get no additional revenue this year, which is a possibility. Okay.
So you might have to defer some of the investments, school choice, career technical. Something's going to have to give.
Absolutely. And that is why one of the big pushes that Jim explained on the TRE piece of it, that will give us the flexibility to fund some of those programs. That's why the big push on the TRE instead of the bond.
And I get.
I know we've run out. I'd be more than willing to
I
wait.
get your frustration, and I don't like that we haven't seen numbers yet either. But I think it's a moving target, and I don't think our task is to come up with the budget. It's more of a review of the budget, and I don't know that we can review that yet.
We can put recommendations into it if we see the numbers in advance. That's what we did 4 of the last 6 years that we've been fiddling around with this thing. And it's very effective to have this citizen input for 2 reasons. One, we become sort of the tip of the communication spear, and the district can use us to say what's good that's going on in the district, all of the programs that need to be funded, and go out and help do things like sell bonds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
but stop there. Why can't we do that with
after the fact, I don't have any buy-in. I have no trust in this administration. And that's
you don't know if you
personally.
have buy-in though, right? You don't know if you have buy-in because you haven't seen it. I mean, you may see it, right, and love it, or you may see it and you may hate it, right?
No, you're right.
And so we
You're
can still get
absolutely
to
right.
that same point there. And I agree with you. I think everyone would love to have those numbers now, but we don't. I mean, but I get that frustration.
And neither do the trustees, and they're just as frustrated. So,
I mean, I can't talk about
it's
the
all
trustees, but
communication, right? So,
we've tried 3 different times to get a workshop, like I said earlier, and we're attempting to have a workshop in the next week or 2. Hopefully that will be a very fruitful conversation, and from that we will build for you to share as much information. I mean, our goal by May 19 is hopefully to have that big book for you. If I can get it to that point in time, I mean, that would be my goal. Again, as you can see in terms of the process and the difficulty to plan in a legislative year, it's not only, we could have started with a base budget, hey, we're not going to do anything, we're going to move forward the same way.
Is there an average amount of money that's unspent on the campus level as far as the budget is concerned?
In terms of?
In terms of any of their line codes that they did not spend, and that money rolls into the big budget?
So I talk about federal sources. I know that we do have a significant amount that rolls forward next year. In terms of the general side, the big pockets of funding that goes unspent are due to vacancies.
Right. I mean, do you have a number that's usually?
So let me put it to you this way. Right now,
I'm thinking about your 20 million. That's all I'm kind of.
Right now, a conservative projection that we've come up with, and Jim and I are within 5 million in terms of what we will add to the fund balance. That basically means, hey, some things did not get spent, maybe we got a little more revenue, and so on and so forth. What we're anticipating is in the range of $20 to $30 million adding to the fund balance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So, could I task you then with one of the agenda items, which is to lay out for the committee what the timeline is for what we're going to say and when we're going to say it?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm gonna come up with that by myself, but I'm happy with putting that on the agenda and let's talk about it, or offline.
Talk to school board members.
Let's do
Why
that.
don't you guys ask your members if they'd like input?
And then, as soon as that budget workshop is set, can you send an email to
Oh,
us?
absolutely. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
You're very welcome. That's all right. This is a hot seat. I love it.
Okay. Tuesday.
You want 5 minutes? Or
Yes.
All right. I am not going to fail.
Thank you.
So, heard about my new assignment? Yes, I am ace principal at peace.
Collecting the data to come up with the rankings.
Right, so that
Okay.
you have the system of generating this paragraph.
Can I listen in on this?
Yes, sure. This paragraph means you are this level of teacher. This paragraph means you're this level of teacher, and the training they give the people that come here, that's disastrous. I don't actually want to go into that.
Okay, so data bad.
The data's really bad data, okay? And
Oh, okay.
and then I'll skip anything about standardized testing and its
Yeah.
problems,
So,
especially when you use
thank you.
district's AC.
Turn that school around. I mean,
Semesters,
those kids
because
deserve
the number of people taking that test are so low that standard deviations. The chances that your data is going to actually be really accurate is not semi-accurate. So that's all very debatable, and I think it's actually going to get the school district sued in the long run. I don't even want to go into that, okay? Because again, I could make this 55 minutes if you want. I want to go into the long-term disastrous decision-making financially behind the teachers. So in order to pay a performance-based system that does not have profit, a business that does not generate profit, we have a set amount of salary that you pay a student, and it is plus, so it's 80 million plus 20 million,
pre-K,
whatever.
preschool, and that's what it was.
And in order to do that, you have
It's
to know that
pre-K, well,
that's
it's
the
pre-K
total
5
amount of
now.
money we're paying our teachers. Therefore, if there's a performance system,
They
it
were
has to be
all,
on a
they
bell
were
curve.
temporary,
And
Because we
so,
have to know in advance,
Right.
there's gonna be 8 teachers who are gonna get the 90,000, and 10 teachers are gonna get this 80,000. And we don't know where they are, but we know they're on there, so the curve goes up and the curve goes down. They show us the curve.
and
All right, so then, so teachers are gonna be slotted in on this bell curve in some location.
And I talked to a couple
Now.
of parents, and the parents
Over
were
the
like,
course of
you
8
know,
years, I'm a
we're
career
proud
teacher.
of. And now we're
Enjoy
in
teaching
the
it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I ran out.
A career. Unless you're weird, you just love the place, you stay, but that's
Not many of
there's not many who are doing that.
Just keep
In any case.
I can't
So
wait.
now, right now, the system in the state of Texas is over a certain number of years.
All right, thanks, man.
I might be a little late.
Experience
I might have to take
and
Alex to
education.
school in the morning, but I don't know yet.
I'll send an email today, and I'm gonna start.
Certainly we can say to a teacher,
That's
over the next 15
Thank
years, you're gonna be continuing to do more.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
he has to be at school at
you know,
7:30,
cost of
so
living
what give me
adjustments
that,
and
like,
Okay.
whatever you need. Are you gonna send
All
email
those
to
things. So it's gonna be
Cheryl?
steady.
I love
You
your
can buy this
perspective,
house
you
and you
just,
can-
That's exactly right. So there's a.
it's
now-
very nice.
Thank you. And I sent you an email already.
Oh, good, I'm glad, okay.
I'm
I'm pretty
at peace for the Ace campus.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, so they haven't spent any money.
I pulled their
Is
budget today,
teacher
and
will be
I'm
at
like, oh. my
Proficient
gosh.
1 for 2
They
years,
have
and
like
then there'll be a proficient 2 for 2 years.
$30,000
and
in
there'll
one
be a proficient 3
line.
for 2
You
years,
can't
and
spend
then there'll be
any more because the.
We have
whatever
till
it is-
April
whatever their
30th.
names are, increases.
So
they'll
we're
be
gonna
getting
get
increasing
together and
salaries, I
spend
said,
some money.
That's false.
Just remember,
There's
spend
no
from federal,
reason
it has to benefit the kids.
for a
This
teacher,
year.
once they're slotted
Yeah,
onto
'cause
the
that was-
bell
that's
curve,
past that.
for you to
That was
assume
March
that they're
27th.
academic
Mhm.
at a higher
Well,
level
what about
than
the
they are today.
IP,
In
like
fact,
the
opposite is
IR
true.
priority
You should
fund?
in
That's
fact
federal
assume
funds
that
too?
teachers will go
Those are from
down
title
on the bell
funds.
curve as time passes. And
Yeah, but a
here's
lot
why.
of
So,
those.
So
so
I know
essentially,
you
let's
get
say
some
I'm
pushback
slotted
from
in,
federal side if
and
you're
this
gonna
is
try to
particularly
spend
true
items
at the
that they
top end
know,
of the
that
bell
they
curve, where
review.
it's very small
Like,
curve, goes
for
up
instance,
and it dives
furniture,
down.
kids,
And then it goes
tables
along
can,
very, very
they
low
won't-
for the rest.
So on the
it's
federal side, I
essentially-
recommend
so the
coordinate with.
huge amount of
It's not
teachers are
really
going to be
about
paid in the
You can call
middle.
me and I'll do
Okay.
that.
Huge
Yeah,
amount of
'cause I wonder,
teachers
'cause
are
it's
gonna
an
be paid in the
ACE
middle.
campus,
It's
maybe
seen
there,
by
is there
new
any
teachers
kind of
coming
plan
who are
in place
capped
that
at
they're
certain
all
levels,
getting
and
them
then dives
late?
down, and then
Yeah.
the selling point of the
Well,
teachers
we'll
is
see what we can do. I
because
can't
they've had
promise
an
anything.
interim since October.
well,
Yeah.
And an office
7%
manager who's been there since Jesus was born, so
I
they.
should have known.
let's say your system's right now. All right, so I got it.
All right, take care.
Alright, thank
The
you.
bottom 10% of teachers are going to leave. Right? And what is that going to do to the curve? The curve's going to slide over to the right, which is good for immediate test score results from students. Because it should be the curve will go and our achievement levels are going to go up. You would assume that be the case. The problem is for the teacher, of course, the curve just passed him, and he just dropped to the lower level on the curve.
So the average teacher,
And so now I
it keeps
need-
moving this way.
Right, so now I need to work harder to maintain the position I'm in. And of course, that is going to be more skewed at the high end, where if like 2 people pass me, I've fallen back a whole segment. I'm not talking like, I fell 2%. I'm like 2 people in the district pass me on score results, and I drop back. Okay? And so holding my position is in fact going to be difficult. It's not that I'm not going to go up on the scale, it's that I'm actually likely to go down on the scale as time passes.
Let me say it a little different way.
Yeah.
If the system works as it's designed, right, we're trying to increase
Guys,
the average.
thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Gilbert, you don't want to talk more?
Get out of here, man.
Come on, bud.
I'm a little thirsty, man.
The intention, of course, is to raise the average caliber of a teacher, right?
Right.
But you're not going to raise the average pay.
Right, and so what happens to me is I get in a position, I get a quick bump,
And that's.
I get a
exactly
bump.
where I'm
So
not-
when I realize,
we think
oh,
we're going to be
shit.
in Lake Wobegon without spending any more money. Everyone's going to be above average, but they're not going to flee.
Right, I get one bump,
Makes sense.
and then I'm like, oh, I'm never getting another raise as long as I'm employed in this school district. Guess what my next move is? I'm the hell out of the school district. Because I can say I got my bump, right? I make $65,000 a year or something like that, and I go to Fort Worth, and I'm like, hey, I make that. And they'll go, we can't quite match that, but we'll get you up here, and then you'll be on the increasing scale standard, and I'm like, boom, I'm out the door. And that is definitely gonna, and I mean, the financial guys knew, oh yes, that's what this does.
So
They know that. They're
So
not
what-
idiots. Because any chief financial officer, any major corporation, when they evaluate people in a bell curve, is definitely going to tell you the same thing. It's just that at a place like that, where I don't need super highly professional people, I can replace them and then train somebody up really quick. You can't just replace me and train somebody up really quick.
but that's where the disagreement is, you see. They're very excited
Yeah.
about TFA.
And they believe that those people can be trained up instantly, but they're, even then, they're going to leave. They're going to leave too, which take me back to this friggin' thing.
But the
Which
average,
doesn't take into account how miserable your teachers are.
but so the average tenure in the district is going to go down.
That's correct.
You're going to have much less experience.
And he
Jim would
thinks that's fine.
argue that that is not going to impact academic achievement. That
Because we can get these TFAs
Trained
that
up
are-
because we've taken
Yeah.
all these. And that thing I was trying to pin him down on, and he kept diving away from, is who are these people? Because we have a whole bunch of people in every school who are just coaching people, and they sit around and do nothing. Principals. I mean, that's what I was talking with her about, with Lucy about. Is those people, they coach 20% of the day, and then they do hall duty and they do standard administrative stuff. And I'm like, put them back in the classroom.
I think one of the
And instead
initial, I think you get an initial, at least from the district's perspective, you
You need
may
an
well
initial
disagree
boost.
with me. You
No,
get
I
an
think
initial
you are
boost
gonna-
because
you
you
might.
have a lot of veteran teachers, okay? Some proportion of which are coasting.
Oh, you need to get them out the door. Sure.
And so
Yeah, it doesn't help you do that, I don't think, actually.
You don't think it does?
No, I don't actually.
Why?
I don't think it actually does that. I think if you'd actually implemented, the real problem is they never really did PDAS. They just have to do it. I'm just like, fire the bad teachers. Why aren't you just firing the bad teachers? I'd like to bring the lawyer in here, because I used to work
Do you
with
know
those
why?
guys 20 years ago. I'm just like, fire them because they sue. And I'm like, so what? If you're right, you'll be right.
No. Because what happened was, in the appeal process for a long time broke down. So the teachers would appeal, and it would go through.
Oh, and then the
to-
district wouldn't do anything.
Then the board of trustees, there'd be a three trustee panel that
Uh-huh.
would review the appeal. And they would just say, we'll give them another chance. And so the board wasn't backing up the principals.
Yeah, that's messed up.
And so the principals said, I don't need this grief.
it's too
I
much
don't,
hassle."
because now you've alienated this teacher forever. They will never do another thing for you.
Sure.
Because that you've basically said they should be gone.
Right.
And now you're stuck with them. So when they couldn't get back up from the board, like,
That's
okay,
good. We can't.
this is what I'm getting the message. Don't can anybody.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's too bad. That makes
So-
sense. I always wondered that. I mean, like, fire.
Right. So this was not the principals. They're paying attention to which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah.
So I'm disappointed. I mean, I was sort of hoping that there would be a clearing of whatever deadwood was there was in the system.
But other than the same harassing we used to do to people to convince them to leave, so what if they're dropping back? They can't get another job anyway, so they're going to hang in there with you.
Well,
I think they're
I
hoping
was
that a bunch
hoping
of them are going to leave.
that by changing, we were sort of stuck in PDAS, and by changing to TEI, we would change the culture, and once teachers would be principals rather would once again say, okay,
We have changed the culture.
I'm going to.
It's terrifying.
I'm going to. Well, and I
It's
think-
terrifying.
And I think
There
It's a
teachers
horrible place to work.
yeah.
And that's changed recently?
Yeah. Now, admittedly, I will only blame. I go a third. We'll go a third to 40%. I mean, the budget cuts made my job horrible. When I had to teach an extra class than I taught before. I have 30 extra kids than I ever taught before, and my job is exhausting. It's a beating. I had
From 3
17
years ago,
years
that's-
where it was fantastic, and then it's been rough. And then that is also the time, of course, he came in, and he has a very strong attitude about bad teaching. The real focus on bad teaching. I'm sick of the damn district focuses on let's do things because it'll help us get rid of bad teachers as opposed to what it's going to do to all of our good teachers, which is I think TEI is generated to do that. I think that's the #1 reason they did it, not to pay off the great teachers, but to actually figure out a way to more steamroll people to get out of the district. I'm like, that is is at best a short-term solution, and I don't think you're going to have that because those people aren't going to leave anyway.
Can I pick your brain on a different subject?
Sure.
Discipline?
Yes.
So I've heard that over the last few years our discipline policy has changed significantly so that there's no longer, we no longer keep track of tardies. There are no longer in-school suspensions, and so, and because most recently, and I'm sympathetic, it's a real dilemma, a group came and appeared before the board, maybe the board meeting, they spoke at the public session,
Okay.
talking about what they call the pipeline to prison.
Sure.
And what they were concerned about is the teachers were not managing discipline issues, they were just saying, this is a stereotype, I'm not saying
Sure.
it's the case, they're just saying, this kid's causing trouble out of my classroom, and these kids were ending up in alternative school or suspension and weren't learning anything, and therefore they never really graduated, and so
Even worse.
now they're trying to keep them in the classroom, but of course if that, the risk is, and I'm just trying to, how bad is this really changed, if you have a lot of discipline issues in a classroom, well then the kids that are there, that are not necessarily eager to learn, but at least willing to learn,
Sure.
You're depriving them of an education.
No doubt about it.
And so has that gotten worse? I mean, that's always been,
Have you
there's
seen
always
that
been a
change?
dilemma.
That has
but-
not changed.
It
In
has
my
not.
mind, that has not changed.
Okay.
I mean, I'm less good for you to talk about because I'm at Woodrow, where we have a lot less of those kinds of problems than at other places. And I teach advanced placement classes, so
Okay,
that has
that
much,
really
much, much
solves
less
you.
effect on me.
Yeah.
I will definitely tell you, as people have asked me, what's the best thing you could possibly do for public education? And you're not gonna like this. I think public school should be voluntary.
No, you're not going to get any disagreement
And
from me.
kids who
I know.
don't
I
wanna go
really
to
think
school,
we're putting
let
children
them
in a box
leave.
that don't
Let
want to
them
be
leave.
stuck in this
Kids,
box.
the kid doesn't want to go to school and he's 13, I might walk out the door and goodbye. And this district spends a stunning amount of its resources
Babysit.
trying to control 5% of the kids in the district who don't want to be here. I mean, they're required by law to be here, but that kills us. And you were asking about TEI, and let's put it with discipline. A kid in my classroom who's causing a disruption is costing me money now. Personally taking food off my table. You think I
Yeah,
want that
you're
kid in my
personal.
classroom?
That's,
Are you kidding me?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna
I
get back.
spoke with
Go
a-
sit in the damn hall every freaking day.
I spoke with a person I've known for a long time that she got her degrees in international studies and whatnot, and so her kids graduated from high school and went off to college, and so she said, I'm going to go back and teach, and so she came back through alternative certification. It was a middle school, either 7th or 8th grade social studies teacher. And
It's
I
a
think it must have
war
been
zone
8th grade
right there.
because she didn't want to teach Texas history, not being from Texas. But she's telling me that the kids would just sit there and flat out tell her, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And worse,
I do get a lot of that.
and worse,
Okay.
they would apparently the desks in her classroom could come apart quite easily. They were bolted together with thumb screws. And
She had those little tables probably. Those
and
things
they
are
would
awesome.
unbolt them, and they would fall on the floor, disrupt the class, and she would go and say, "Give me the bolts," and they
Sure.
would say, "What bolts?" And this was just driving her nuts.
That's a problem that can be solved, but I don't know if it's 7th and 8th grade. But yeah, it is really imperative to get those kids out, and we need to make an honest statement, and that says, we do need to send these kids to an alternate school. We need to fund the alternate school. We need to actually do it. But that's crazy, insane amounts of money that we can't be doing. But yeah, that's my that's the thing. And people look at me like crazy. People are going to be in prison. I'm like, great. The overall performance of the students in the school, particularly in a low socioeconomic area, are going to skyrocket.
For kids that want to be there.
The average result will improve.
I can certainly inspire uninspired kids to get going, but when they're being dragged with giant anchors around their legs by other misbehaving students who really just I just really want to leave. I just do not let me leave. That would be really helpful to us.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, the TEI certainly sounds like it's awesome, and it's not. And false data collection, I could go on and on about that that's the thing that set me off immediately about it, so.
False data?
False data collection. So
Bad
they have-
data.
They have, yeah, I mean, essentially they're creating